Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel, where we share mysterious experiences from around the world. Thank you so much to everyone who's been sending in your stories. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more spine-chilling encounters from everywhere. How was your day? Let us know in the comments. Now, get comfy in bed, switch on your nightlight, put on your headphones, and let's unwind with today's mysterious stories. Hey, okay, so I need to tell you what happened, because it still feels unreal even saying it out loud. My fiancé Eli and I live in Anchorage, and we decided to do this cozy little Christmas trip, partly so I could show him some places I knew from when I lived near Fairbanks for a year back in high school. Nothing dramatic, just a road trip, some nostalgia, cute photos, hot chocolate vibes. That was the plan. And then last night we got it in our heads to drive out toward the Denali area to see the stars. You know how Alaska skies can get. So clear it feels like you could reach up and grab them. We drove for a couple hours, music on low, just the two of us talking and laughing, bundled up, excited. But at some point we ended up way farther out than we meant to, down this long stretch near Healy, off toward the Stampede Trail area. And I swear, it was like the world just thinned out. The pavement didn't even gradually fade, it just stopped. Like someone drew a line and said, "Nope, not past here." Eli and I looked at each other like, okay, turn around, obviously. Except turning around was easier said than done because the snow was deep and uneven and the road was narrow. And it was pitch black. No streetlights, no moon, no cell service, no nothing. There had been a couple houses way back, but they were far behind us at that point, and it felt like we were completely alone. And I don't even know how to describe this part without sounding dramatic, but the whole time we were out there, I had this heavy feeling in my chest, like dread. Not fear exactly, more like your body whispering, "You're not supposed to be here." Anyway, we try to turn around. We get stuck. Of course we do. So Eli gets out and starts pushing while I'm in the driver's seat with my foot down, trying to rock the car out without digging us deeper. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I kept looking into the darkness like I expected something to step out of it. After a minute or two, somehow, we get free. We both jump back in and we're like, okay, we're done. We're leaving. We're going back to the Airbnb right now. We're speeding back the way we came, and I'm just trying to breathe again, when Eli suddenly goes, "My phone! I dropped my phone!" And my stomach just dropped with it. At first we're trying to talk through options like rational adults. Like, maybe we stop near where the pavement ends and walk back carefully. But he pulls up the location on that tracking app, and it says his phone is still out there, like a 30-minute walk from the paved part, in below zero weather, in the dark, with no service. Eli decides he's going to drive back in a little, just part way, and then walk the rest. He takes my phone because it has the flashlight and the map, and he tells me to lock the doors the second he steps out. He's walking ahead of the car, sweeping the flashlight over the snow, and I'm watching him through the windshield like it's a horror movie. Just this small circle of light moving in a world that feels way too big and way too quiet. And then, something changes. I see him whip the flashlight around, fast, like he heard something behind him. He starts scanning the ground frantically, like he's panicking, like he needs to find the phone right now. He spots it a second later, snatches it up, and then he just runs. Eli has asthma. I have never seen him run like that, not even close. He bolts back to the car, yanks the door open, gets in, locks it immediately, and we're gone. Tires crunching over snow, engine louder than it should be, both of us not saying a word for a long stretch. And he just goes, "It was cold." But he wouldn't look at me, and I could tell he was rattled in a way I hadn't seen before. We finally get back to the Airbnb, and it's quiet and warm and normal again, so I'm thinking, okay, we're fine. That was creepy, but it's over. We go to bed. And then I wake up at around 5 in the morning, and Eli is lying there awake with his phone flashlight on, just staring, not even pretending to sleep. I whisper, "What are you doing?" And he says, really quietly, "I'll tell you when it's light out." So now I'm fully awake, heart pounding, because what does that even mean? I keep asking him, gently, "What's going on?" And eventually he tells me he woke up around 3 because something was holding his ankle, like a hand. Not crushing it, just firm, like someone had decided, "I've got you." He said he froze, convinced he was still half dreaming, and then it stopped. He dozed off for a bit, and then he woke up again because he heard tapping. And not just in one spot. It moved, like it traveled around the room, along the walls, one side to another, all the way around. And one of the walls is literally an exterior wall. We're in a secluded area. It's not like there are neighbors inches away. He fell asleep again, and then woke up because something squeezed his forearm hard enough to hurt. He swears it was on top of the blanket, not under it, and when I checked, there were no marks. Nothing. Just his face. He looked like he'd seen something he couldn't explain. And then he finally says the part he hadn't told me yet. He says, "It started when I went out to find my phone." And I'm like, "What started?" And he tells me that right before he found it, right before he freaked out and ran, he heard a man's voice, right next to him in the darkness, like someone was standing shoulder to shoulder with him. And the voice said, "Did you find it yet?" I swear to you, the way he said it, he wasn't trying to scare me. He looked embarrassed and shaken and dead serious, like he hated even repeating it. And I need you to understand, neither of us are the type to spin stories. Eli doesn't mess around with paranormal stuff. He's practical, he's cautious, and I'm hard of hearing, and I don't sleep with my hearing aid, so if there really were tapping sounds, I wouldn't have heard them. But I also didn't feel or hear anything myself, which almost makes it worse, because it means whatever happened was focused on him. So now we're sitting here in daylight, acting normal on the outside, but everything feels off. Eli wants to end our trip early. He's genuinely freaked out. And honestly, I don't blame him, because I keep thinking about that empty road, the way the pavement just ended, the way the darkness felt like it had weight, and that voice, so casual, like it had been watching the whole time, like we were never alone out there. And I don't know what I think it was. I just know it didn't feel normal. So, I need to tell you what just happened, because I'm still wide awake, and my heart is not back to normal yet. I jolted awake to this insanely loud sound, like, the only way I can describe it is that harsh, mangled animatronic-style noise from those creepy old horror game videos. It was blasting from the left side of the bed, right over near my brother Mason's little laptop setup. I glanced at the time, 4:05 a.m., and the sound just kept going. Somewhere between like 15 seconds to maybe 40. Long enough that I went from, "What is that?" to, "Oh my God, something is happening." It was loud enough that it didn't feel possible for anyone in the room to sleep through it. But Mason? Out cold, completely peaceful. And my uncle in the room across the hall, who's usually up ridiculously early. Nothing. Not a shuffle, not a cough, not even a, "Hey, what was that?" The creepiest part is, the second I sat up and made it obvious I was awake, like the moment I moved and looked toward the sound, it stopped. Abruptly. Like someone hit a mute button. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this kind of thing has happened before. Not every time, but enough that it's become this pattern I dread. Whenever I sleep in Mason's room, something random happens. Weird sounds, out of nowhere, that feel like they're being played in the room. like a clip or a burst of audio that doesn't belong. It's sporadic, but it's never been a one-time thing. And it isn't even limited to that room either. I'm pretty sure I've been woken up by strange sounds in my own room too, just not as often. And before you ask, no, I don't think I'm hallucinating. I know what I heard. It was real, it was loud, and it came from that corner near the laptop. If I had to guess logically, I'd say it was the laptop itself. Maybe a corrupted notification, a background tab, some weird startup noise, a random audio file, a Bluetooth glitch, something like that. But emotionally, the way it started and stopped felt personal. What makes it weirder is that this used to be my room when I was little, and as a kid, I hated sleeping in there. I could never explain why. Part of it might have been the normal kid thing, being in a room farther from my parents, feeling unsettled, all that. Mason actually has that same issue now, so it runs in the family. But there's also that other thought, the one you feel a little silly saying out loud. Like, what if there's something about that room? You know how people always say kids are more sensitive to paranormal stuff? I'm not saying I'm sure that's real, but sometimes I wonder. Especially because, honestly, if any spirit would mess with us, it would be my grandpa. He passed a few years ago, and he had that kind of mischievous energy. Like he'd absolutely find it funny to spook somebody at 4 a.m. and then disappear the second they notice. And it's not just this either. There are other little things that make me feel like I'm, I don't know, more prone to weird encounters. Like sometimes I fall asleep with earbuds in. I'm messy, so usually they end up somewhere stupid, under my back, on the floor, tangled in the sheets. But on a few random mornings, I'll wake up and they're neatly back in the case, even though I know I didn't do that. It hasn't happened lately, and the only reason that stands out is because I mentioned it to my dad a while back, and it's almost like, once I said it out loud, it stopped, and nobody is coming into my room at night. Nobody. I'm alone from the time I fall asleep to the time I wake up. My dad has his own history with stuff like this too, which is part of why I can't fully brush it off. He told me about this guy he knew growing up. Let's call him Eli, who claimed he could see and talk to spirits. My dad had a childhood friend who died young. My dad called him Ricky when he talked about him, and Eli would randomly bring up things Ricky supposedly said. But here's the part that always gives me chills. Eli would mention details that only Ricky and my dad would have known, like tiny specific memories, inside jokes, weird little stories from days when it was just the two of them biking around, stuff that would be impossible to guess unless you'd actually been there. And years later, this is the part that messed with my dad the most. Eli talked to him again, not long after my grandpa died, and started mentioning my grandpa. Same thing. Specific moments, private memories, even things that happened when my dad and grandpa were traveling abroad. Stuff that wasn't public, wasn't family gossip, wasn't something you could just pick up and repeat. My dad is a spiritual person, but he's not a liar. He'll prank me sometimes in normal, goofy ways, but he wouldn't invent something like that. Not with that many details, not with that kind of sincerity. So I guess that's where my head goes when something like tonight happens. And now I'm back to the original question, the one I keep circling like I'm hoping it'll suddenly sound less insane. What on earth was that noise? A glitch? A random audio clip? Some weird laptop thing? A notification from some buried app? A speaker bug? A Bluetooth connection waking up? Or was it something else? Because it's Christmas morning, it's still dark outside, and I'm sitting here in the same room that's been creeping me out since I was little, and I'm telling you, that sound didn't feel accidental. It felt like it wanted me awake, and I would really, genuinely love an explanation. So, let me tell you about something that happened years ago, late spring of 2006 in Italy. It was one of those holiday Mondays, the kind where the weather finally starts behaving and everyone takes it as an excuse to be outside, grilling, hanging around with friends, doing the usual "we deserve this" thing. I'd been out all day, and I'll be honest, from around lunchtime until early evening, I mostly drank. Not to the point of being wasted. I got myself home, walked normalno, even parked the car without any drama. I felt clear. Tired, sure, but not drunk. Back then, I lived alone in a ground floor studio, small place, with this little garden right in front. At night, the garden lights made the whole area kind of bright, but in a way that created a lot of shadows. The kind of lighting that makes corners feel deeper than they are. It never bothered me though. I was used to it. When I got home, I tried to balance things out. Ate something light, drank a ton of water, and just zoned out for a while. Video games, a bit of internet, nothing unusual. Around 2 in the morning, I finally went to bed. I had a cat then. Her name was Mina. She was about 2 years old, and she had this habit of choosing her own sleeping spots like she paid rent. I left the windows cracked open because the air felt nice. Anyway, at some point in the night, I felt something climb onto the bed, right around my knees. And I didn't even fully wake up at first, because I just assumed, automatically, that's Mina. So I reached down to pet her. And instead, something bit my hand. But listen, it wasn't a normal bite. That's what made my whole body go cold. First of all, I've got big hands. Always have. My palm is wide enough that it's kind of noticeable, and I dealt in the past with a hormonal condition that made my hands larger than average. So when I say this bite covered a lot of surface, I mean it. The bite stretched across my palm, starting near the pinky side and ending closer to the base of my thumb. A wide, full mouth pressure, like something trying to warn me. But here's the thing. There were no teeth. It didn't hurt. It wasn't wet. It didn't feel like skin puncturing skin. It was more like a firm clamp. A mouth, but not like any mouth I can easily describe. I snapped my eyes open, terrified. Like instant adrenaline, heart hammering, skin buzzing. And I saw this black shape slip off the bed. Not like a solid animal jumping down. More like something that poured off the mattress. Like smoke or vapor, or the thick cloud from an e-cigarette. It dropped to the floor and just melted into the shadows near the garden light. I sat up, staring, trying to force my brain to label it as something normal. Then I looked over, and Mina was still asleep. Not on the bed, on a chair in the corner. She lifted her head like, "What is your problem?" and then just stayed there, confused but calm. So it couldn't have been her. She hadn't moved. I turned on every light in the apartment. I checked the corners, under the bed, behind furniture, the whole place. Nothing. No sound, no movement, no clue. And I remember thinking, okay, dream, half asleep, one of those weird sleep moments. So I tried to shake it off. I got back into bed, put the TV on with a sleep timer, because I didn't want to be alone with the silence. And eventually, I drifted off again. And then, it happened a second time. Sometime later, no idea how long, I woke up feeling like I couldn't breathe. Like something was sitting on my chest, pressing down, heavy enough to pin the air inside me. But I want to be clear, I wasn't frozen. This wasn't that classic, can't move thing people describe. I could move. The second I realized what was happening, I screamed. I moved. I reacted instantly. After that, nothing. It never happened again. Not once. I lived there for a few more years and then moved, maybe 2 or 3 years later, to a new place. And I remember at some point, much later, finding out that the year before all this, someone older, around their 50s, who lived above me, had died in bed. People mentioned it casually, like it was just a sad detail, nothing more. And look, I'm saying this plainly. I don't believe in the paranormal. I'm not trying to convince anyone of shadow people or spirits or anything like that. I didn't even know the term shadow people until much later, when I stumbled across it online and felt this unpleasant little click of recognition. To me, whatever happened that night was an animal, something physical, something that behaved like a creature, cautious, warning, defensive, maybe trapped, maybe confused. But what kind of animal bites without teeth? What moves like smoke? How does something feel heavy on your chest and then disappear like vapor? That's the part I can't neatly explain. All I know is, it felt real. It felt present. And for 2 moments in one night, in that little bright and shadowed ground floor apartment, something unfamiliar was there with me, close enough to bite my hand and press the air out of my lungs. And then it was gone, like it was never there at all. So, I've never been the kind of person who's like, yep, ghosts are real, case closed. I've always been pretty practical. But I'll admit, when you hear enough weird stories from other people, you stop rolling your eyes quite as hard, you know? Anyway, this happened over Christmas. My husband, Caleb, our little one, Poppy, and I flew down to stay with his parents for the holidays. They've got this older house, and we were sleeping upstairs in a room that doesn't have air conditioning. It gets so warm at night that we basically survive off a rattly fan and whatever breeze we can steal through an open window. Poppy is an amazing sleeper, like suspiciously amazing. She sleeps in a little travel cot at the end of our bed and usually gives us a solid 12 hours without making a sound. But that night, around maybe 4:15 in the morning, she suddenly let out this cry. And the thing is, it wasn't a sad cry. Not hungry, not scared. It was more like annoyed. Like someone had interrupted her mid-dream and she was complaining about it. So I grabbed my phone, flicked on the flashlight, and walked over to check on her. She was asleep, face down on her tummy, totally still. Normally she sleeps with her little bottom up in the air, so seeing her flat like that made me pause. I figured maybe she'd had a brief night terror or shifted weirdly in a deep sleep. So far, nothing spooky. Just parenting stuff. I climbed back into bed, turned off my flashlight, and started to drift off again. And that's when I felt it. Movement, right at the end of the bed. Not like a tiny shake, like the mattress dipped, the way it does when someone climbs up or puts their weight down. And at that exact moment, Poppy cried again. I sat bolt upright, heart instantly racing, because my first thought was, oh my God, she's out of the cot. She's on the bed. How did she even... I turned the flashlight on so fast I practically blinded myself, and I went straight back over to her. She was still in the travel cot, still asleep, not even stirring. And I remember standing there in the dark, staring, trying to make my brain settle down, like, okay, fine, must have imagined it, must be half asleep, must be something. I got back into bed, told myself I was being ridiculous, and tried to relax. A minute or two later, I felt the movement again. This time, Caleb shifted his feet at the same time, like he was adjusting the sheets, so I immediately blamed him. I thought, okay, he's tugging the bedding with his feet and it's making the mattress feel like it's moving. Mystery solved. I rolled over and eventually fell asleep. Then morning hits. Around 6, Poppy wakes up the way she always does. No crying, just babbling to herself, going, Mama, Dada, Mama, Dada, like she's giving a little speech to the ceiling. And then, the bedroom door, which was fully closed, swung open so hard it smacked the wall. Like it didn't creak open. It didn't slowly drift. It flew open. And again, my brain refused to go paranormal. I just went, wind, old house, upstairs draft, weird latch. I mean, the window was open. The house is creaky, and the doors never seem to sit right. Still, I won't lie. I got this cold little prickling feeling at the back of my neck. Later, when Caleb finally woke up, I mentioned the door thing, kind of laughing like, well, that was dramatic. And he just goes quiet for a second and says, "This house feels off sometimes." That's when my stomach dropped, because, okay, I can explain away my half-asleep brain. But him too? On a different night? Same exact sensation? His mom is really into tarot, like really into it. She has shelves and shelves of decks in her room, which is right across the hall from ours. Caleb isn't into it at all, but he said he'd always heard that certain things can act like a doorway, and that maybe the house kind of collects energy. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not even a believer. But we're both Catholic, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel brave in that moment. I went downstairs, grabbed the Bible, brought it back up, and set it on the bed like, okay, if there's anything weird happening, you're not doing it in here. And the wild part is, afterward, I tried searching for explanations online. People kept saying stuff like hypnagogic sensations, half-asleep muscle tricks, sleep paralysis adjacent things. But I can't fully accept that because it wasn't just me. It was Caleb too. And neither of us has ever experienced anything like it before. We're in our 30s. We've slept in hotels, old houses, new houses, apartments, everywhere. And this was the first time either of us felt something that specific. So I don't know what it was. All I know is, that night, in that warm upstairs room with the window open and the fan humming, it really did feel, just for a few seconds, like something else was there with us. And that is not a feeling I'm eager to get familiar with. So, my partner Casey and I moved into this apartment in early April, and I swear, within the first week, we were already exchanging those little looks like, okay, are we going to talk about what just happened? It's this small 4-unit building that used to be offices. At least, that's what the neighbors told us. And judging by the fixtures and that very specific beige-on-beige vibe, it's probably from the late 1940s or early 1950s. We're upstairs, one of the 2 units on the second floor, and at first it was, honestly, kind of mild. Annoying, but easy to shrug off. Like, I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye, just a flicker, a shape, and when I'd turn, nothing. Or I'd find a closet door cracked open that I know I closed. You know that feeling where you're standing there, staring at it, trying to remember if you're losing your mind or if the door is? We did the responsible thing first, checked for anything dangerous. No gas issues, no carbon monoxide leak, nothing like that. So after a while, we just accepted it as, our place is a little weird. But then, around late May, 2 buildings right next to ours got demolished. Old ones, like early last century old. And I'm not saying there's a connection, but I am saying that after that, the whole atmosphere shifted. Like something got stirred up. That's when the waking up started. We'll be dead asleep and then, bam, wide awake, heart racing. That weird cold panic where your body is acting like something's wrong before your brain can even catch up. And it's always around the same times, 3:07 a.m. or 5:02 a.m. Like, weirdly specific, right? Not always those exact minutes, but close enough that we noticed. One night, I woke up so hard I practically sat straight up, and I thought I saw someone in our bedroom doorway. Not like a vague shadow. A person, an older woman's shape, kind of still, just watching. I remember the impression more than the details, like my brain didn't want to fill in the face. And the second I fully snapped awake, she was gone. No sound, No footsteps, nothing. Just empty doorway and the hallway beyond it looking totally normal. Except it didn't feel normal. And we started seeing these shadow movements during the day too. Like I'll be in the living room and I'll see someone pass into the bathroom and I'll automatically call, "Hey, can you grab?" And then I'll stop because Casey is literally on the couch the whole time, not moving, looking at me like, "What?" Or they'll think I walked into the bedroom and come looking for me, and I'm at the kitchen sink. It happens often enough that we don't even laugh every time anymore. It's just this constant little glitch. And then, this is the part that really got to me. Things started moving. Not subtle stuff like, "Oh, maybe it slid." I mean, objects that should not be moving, falling in ways that make no sense. I was crouched in the kitchen one day, reaching down for something on the bottom shelf, and a travel mug, one of those chunky metal ones, just launched out of the cabinet and clipped the top of my shoulder. It wasn't perched on the edge. It wasn't wobbling. It was back inside the cabinet like it belonged there. Another time, Casey was making food and a knife slipped out of the cutlery organizer like someone nudged it. It dropped tip first and hit the counter, and if it had landed just a few inches differently, it would have hit our cat, Miso, who was, of course, right there like cats always are, supervising the kitchen. After that, we both kind of stood there in silence, and I remember Casey just quietly going, "Okay, I didn't imagine that." The night I thought I saw the woman, I turned my head and one of the cats, Juniper, was sitting up in bed, frozen, staring straight at the doorway, and her head was moving just slightly, like she was watching something shift position in the hallway. Not looking at the door like it's a noise, looking like there was something there. And then there's this other detail. Maybe it's unrelated, but it feels hard to ignore. At the end of our block, there's an empty lot, just weeds and fencing. About 20-something years ago, 2 apartment buildings there caught fire. A bunch of people died, 8 or 9, depending on which article you believe. There's a plaque on a stone marker, really plain, like the neighborhood tried to fold the tragedy into the background and move on. And we're basically the closest building that's actually lived in. So sometimes, in the quiet moments, especially when we're both awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, listening to the building settle, I wonder if it's not even about our unit. Like maybe it's not our apartment that has the history. Maybe it's just the area. Like the ground remembers. And the landlord? He's genuinely a nice guy. Normal, friendly, fixes stuff fast. The kind of person you don't want to corner with. "So, hey, has anyone ever seen a ghost here?" Because suddenly you're that tenant. And I don't want to be a weirdo. But also, I don't really know what to do with the fact that our home sometimes feels like it's watching us back. So we keep the lights on a little longer than we used to. We tell ourselves it's stress, or old wiring, or the building shifting. And then we wake up again at 3 a.m., and the hallway feels occupied. So, about 6 years ago, my family and I moved into this older house, the kind with a little too much creak in the floors and a lot of personality in the walls. I remember feeling excited, like we were stepping into something cozy and solid. And we did. It's been home. But almost right away, there were these moments that made me pause and go, "Okay, what was that?" The first weird thing happened not long after we moved in. It was late, and my wife, Tessa, and I were in our bedroom watching TV, just winding down. And out of nowhere, we started hearing this clinking sound, like chains knocking together. Not a little tap either, enough that we both muted the show and just listened. We got up, checked the hallway, checked the closet, even opened the windows like that would somehow explain it. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it was something stupid, like the ceiling fan pull chain tapping against the light cover, or something shifting with the house settling. But it didn't really sound like that. It sounded like metal. Then there was the second thing. Same setup, bedroom TV on at night, just relaxing. Our dog Bowie, big black lab, sweet as anything, was tucked under the bed. Bowie is not dramatic. Bowie doesn't bark at the door. Bowie doesn't do the "I heard a leaf outside" thing. He's the kind of dog who watches strangers walk in and basically says, "Sure, you live here now too, I guess." But that night, he suddenly started growling. A low, serious growl. Not playful, not uncertain, like he had decided something was wrong. He was staring straight at the hallway, just locked in. I called his name, tried to coax him out, and he wouldn't budge. He didn't charge, he didn't whine. He just stayed there, staring like he was tracking someone standing just out of sight. And the thing is, Bowie only ever gets that way when there's someone in the house he doesn't recognize right away. So that one stuck with me, because I couldn't explain it away as easily. The third experience was around Thanksgiving last year. My mom, Marianne, was over, and we were doing the whole holiday scramble, talking over each other, checking timers, trying to remember if we already added salt. I turned to ask her something, and as I looked toward the kitchen, I saw this woman, tall, blonde, wearing a bright teal top, walk like she belonged there, straight toward the pantry. It wasn't a flicker, it wasn't a shadow. It was the shape of a person moving with purpose, like she was just going to grab something off a shelf. And as soon as I started to say, "Mom, I just saw," my mom cut in and calmly finished my sentence. She described the same woman, same height, same hair, same teal shirt. And then she told me something that made my stomach drop a little. She'd seen her the day before, near the stove, just standing there for a second like she was watching. I remember staring at my mom like, "Please tell me you're messing with me." But she wasn't laughing. She wasn't trying to scare me. If anything, she looked annoyed, like, of course this house would do that while I'm trying to cook. And then the most recent thing. Honestly, that's the one that shook me the most. It happened last night. I was asleep, and Tessa was still awake in bed playing video games with friends, headset on, laughing, totally in her own world. She nudged me awake and whispered my name in this tense, careful voice. She said, "I heard the door handle." And I'm half asleep, like, what do you mean you heard it? But then she tells me she watched it, watched the handle move, like someone was jiggling it. Then the door opened. Our dog was in the room with us. Everyone else in the house was asleep. And Tessa is the least ghost story person I know. She's the type who rolls her eyes at supernatural stuff. If anything, she loves being the voice of reason. So when she said, "I don't have an explanation for that," I knew she meant it. After that, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to replay it in my mind like maybe there was a normal answer I could grab onto. Maybe pressure changes. Maybe the latch didn't catch. Maybe the house shifted. But the way she described it, so specific, made it harder to shrug off. And it's not just us either. We've had friends stay the night who casually mention, the next morning, that they saw someone move through a doorway, or heard footsteps when no one was awake. Nothing dramatic, just those little comments people make when they're not trying to be scary, which almost makes it worse, you know? Anytime I've seen something, I've always tried to tell myself it's my eyes playing tricks on me. I'm not out here wanting a haunting. We've got multiple carbon monoxide alarms, working and tested. We test our well water every year. I try to be responsible about it because I know how easy it is for fear to fill in gaps. The land we're on is native tribal land, and it's pretty clear it was used by the local tribes long ago. I find arrowheads sometimes, just out on the property like little quiet reminders that people were here long before us. Last night it was stormy. All the windows were shut, and we hadn't been running the heater or AC because we've been using the fireplace instead. No drafts, no weird airflow, nothing obvious. And then, this is the part I almost hesitate to say out loud. Years ago, some random person who claimed they were psychic told me there was something in the house that likes to linger in the hallway and stare into the bedrooms. I didn't believe them. I still don't want to. But once someone puts an image like that in your head, it's hard not to think of it when you're walking past a dark hallway at night. It's hard not to glance a little faster toward your door before you close it. So that's where I'm at, trying to hold on to logic, trying not to spiral, but also collecting these moments like little stones in my pocket. One or two you can ignore, but when they keep piling up, you start to wonder what, exactly, you moved in with. Hey, so I need to tell you about the last couple of days because I swear, things have been weird. Like the kind of weird that makes you stop mid-thought and go, okay, what is happening right now? It started small, honestly. Just little stuff. Misplacing things, walking into a room and forgetting why I went in there. Normal, right? I kept telling myself I was just tired or distracted. But then it started stacking up, one thing after another, and it stopped feeling normal. One night I had this dream, except it didn't feel like a regular dream. It felt like I'd already lived it. Not in a, oh, déjà vu kind of way, but in this heavier way. Like my whole body was warning me that something was about to happen. I could see the moment, feel it, like it was happening in real time. And I just knew something was coming. And then, nothing happened. The moment passed. Life kept moving. But the feeling didn't fully leave me, you know? It's like my brain kept hovering over it, trying to make sense of it. More stuff happened after that. Random, unexplained things. Enough that I started questioning myself. Like, am I just spiraling? Am I noticing things too much? Because I know how it sounds when you say it out loud. But here's the thing. I've always been open-minded. I believe in God, yeah. But I also believe there's more out there than what we can explain. And I've had those little premonition moments before. Years ago, I used to get these flashes, and I'd be right about things too often. My family used to joke I was a jinx. They'd get nervous when I said, I have a bad feeling, because it felt like I was always accidentally predicting something. That stopped for a long time though, like years. I'd still get tiny snippets every now and then, but nothing intense. So when all this started again, back to back, it hit different. It wasn't just a thought. It was this full body feeling. Intense. Like my chest was tight and my skin was buzzing. Like my body was reacting before my mind could catch up. By the time the 5th incident happened, maybe the 6th? I don't even know. I stopped counting because I kept trying to rationalize it. Like I'd go, okay, there's got to be a logical explanation. I wanted there to be one. And then, something personal came up in my head. My mom passed recently, and I didn't have a good relationship with her. It was complicated. Old pain, trauma, stuff that shaped me and my siblings in ways I'm still unpacking. We weren't close. Not in the way people imagine when they say mother and daughter. But I had forgiven her in my own way. I genuinely had. I'd reached this place where I could say, I hope she's at peace. I hope she's okay wherever she is. I'm telling you that because part of me started wondering if she was trying to reach me. There were 2 moments in one day that felt like a straight-up glitch. Like, I'm standing there and I feel this tap on my back. Clear as day. I turn around expecting it to be my kid, because who else would it be? And there's nobody. And when I look again, my son Levi, is asleep. Fully asleep. And I just stood there, frozen. Because it wasn't like, oh, maybe I imagined it. It felt real. And right after that, this image of my mom just flashed in my mind out of nowhere. Like someone shoved the thought into my head. And it hit me hard, even though I thought I was past the worst of it. Then today, this part is the one that really sent me. I was in Levi's room talking about something completely random, and I glance out the window. I see what looks like a star, just a bright point in the sky. But something about it caught my attention, so I moved closer. My phone is old and cranky, but I tried zooming in anyway, and then the light moved. Not like a cloud passing or my hands shaking, like it shifted. And immediately my brain went, record right now, because nobody believes you when you say you saw something in the sky. So I started recording, and I had this sudden thought, like those people online who talk to lights in the sky, and I felt ridiculous even doing it. I was like, okay, if you can hear me, move again. And it did. It responded, like it actually listened. And Levi freaked out, like full panic. He grabbed my arm like, Mom, what is that? After a second, I stopped recording because my logical brain tried to take back control. I was like, maybe it's the camera. Maybe it's a trick of the light. Maybe I'm making this bigger than it is. But then I kept watching, and I saw these tiny, flickering lights, different colors, like they were dancing around the sky. Small, quick, almost playful looking. And I know how that sounds. I know. I'm literally hearing myself as I tell you this. About 10 or 15 minutes later, I looked again, and the star was gone. Not faded, not moved behind something. Gone. Just black sky where it had been. So I recorded again, trying to show it was really gone. Like, see? It's not there. I'm not making this up. And then, out of nowhere, I see these drones. I swear, right when the drones show up, my phone starts acting even worse. It kept freezing, refusing to focus, doing that thing where the screen lags. But one of the drones came so close to the building, that I could see its shape clearly. Like it wasn't a tiny dot anymore. It hovered almost level with our floor. And for context, we're pretty high up. 6th floor in an apartment building, and there are only a couple floors above us. So this thing was basically at eye level. It passed between our building and the one across from us, like it was just casually sliding through the space, and Levi was terrified. He kept saying, "Why is it so close? Why is it right here?" And I just stood there trying to force my brain into logic mode, trying to tell myself, it's just drones, it's just lights, it's just stress, it's grief, it's coincidence. But the problem is, it's not just one thing, it's everything stacked on everything. The dream, the feeling, the taps, the sudden thoughts of my mom, the lights, the movement, the sky going empty, the drones right after. And I'm not saying I know what any of it means. I don't. I'm just saying something has felt off in a way I can't explain, and it's been happening too fast, too close together, for me to shrug it off anymore. There's more, honestly, but I won't dump it all on you. I just needed to tell someone who would actually listen and not immediately laugh or brush it off. Because I'm still sitting here like, what if something or someone is trying to get my attention? So, I need to tell you about something that's been sitting heavy in my chest, because the more I try to explain it to myself, the less normal it feels. My grandma, her name's Marianne, has always had this soft, glowing thing for France. Not in a casual way either, like the real deal. She spent a summer there when she was young, and every once in a while she'll get this faraway look and start talking about cobblestone streets, tiny cafes, and this man she met who she swears was the love of her life. She'll never say his name, but she'll smile like she's seeing him again. And she's always loved French movies, When she was younger, she used to dress up and go to these little independent theaters that showed foreign films. Even now, she'll sit through anything with subtitles if it means the mood is right. Rainy window, cup of tea, that kind of thing. So this past Christmas, I thought I'd nailed it. I found this French indie sci-fi DVD online. Said it was from 2019, kind of obscure, the sort of thing she'd brag about discovering. The title on the case was La Route des Étoiles. It was secondhand, but it looked fine. Nothing about it screamed, weird cursed object, you know? Marianne was delighted. Like, genuinely delighted. She held it like it was something precious. Then today, she finally sat down to watch it. She put it in her DVD player, pressed play, and nothing happened the way it should have. No studio logo, no menu, no cheesy trailer. Just this dim, grainy sound, like a kid whispering from the other side of a wall. Marianne said at first she thought the TV volume was broken, or maybe it was picking up audio from another channel. But then the screen changed. One single image popped up. No motion, no text. It was a photo of a child standing in the middle of a big store aisle, like a supermarket or a department store. Fluorescent lights overhead, shelves stretching behind them. And the kid was facing the camera, except they didn't have a face. Not like it was blurred out, not like shadows, just blank. And in place of eyes and a mouth, there was this messy little smiley face drawn on, like someone scribbled it with a marker right onto the photo. The kind of thing that tries to look playful and somehow ends up looking worse because of it. Marianne didn't even yell. She just got very still, then called my name in this quiet voice that told me she was already scared. I went over, trying to be the rational one. Maybe it's a weird bonus feature, I said. Maybe it's corrupted. I actually laughed a little, like if I treated it lightly, it would turn normal again. But when I took the DVD home and put it into my laptop, that's when my stomach really dropped. There wasn't a normal video file on the disc. No .vob files, nothing you'd expect. Instead, there was basically almost nothing. Just a plain text file with a link inside. One link, sitting there like it was waiting to be clicked. And I know how this sounds. I know. But curiosity got me. The link opened to a set of videos that didn't look like the film at all. More like fragments. Short clips. Strange angles. Flickers of hallways, shelves, empty rooms. And underneath it all, that same thin, childlike voice. Not screaming, not laughing. Just talking softly, like it's telling you a secret you didn't ask to hear. The more I watched, the more I had this uncomfortable feeling that I wasn't supposed to be watching them. Like I'd opened the wrong door in a familiar house. It felt connected to the movie somehow, like an extra layer stitched underneath it. Like the real film was never the point. Like the DVD was just a wrapper. Since that night, Marianne has been different. Not dramatically. She's not running around yelling about ghosts or anything. It's subtler than that, which almost makes it worse. She's quieter, more distracted. She'll pause in the middle of a sentence like she forgot where she is. She told me she keeps thinking about that voice and that it sounded like it was trying to tell her something important, something urgent, but she can't remember the words clearly, just the feeling. And she keeps saying, this isn't just a prank. I keep trying to talk myself down. Maybe it's some odd art project. Maybe someone used old discs to hide links. Maybe it's a bootleg. Maybe the seller swapped something by accident. There are 100 explanations that should make me feel better. But when I picture that photo again, the child standing alone under those harsh lights with that crude smiley face where their features should be, I get that same chill all over. So now I'm sitting here wondering what I'm supposed to do next. Because part of me wants to smash the disc and forget it ever existed. And the other part of me, the part I don't love admitting is there, keeps thinking that whatever this is, it chose my grandma on purpose. So, I've got this long, weird history of creepy stuff happening around me, and it always feels like it's aimed at me specifically. Little things happen all the time, too. Faint knocks, random thuds like something dropped, that, did I just hear footsteps, feeling. But I'm only going to tell you the biggest moments, because otherwise we'd be here all day. Lately, I've landed on two possible explanations, and neither one makes me feel great. Either something paranormal is real, or there's been someone hiding in our home. And honestly, I lean paranormal, mostly because the other option is somehow even more horrifying. It really started after we moved into this house in Coventry, well, near Coventry, in a quiet neighborhood that looks completely normal in the daytime. We bought the place from this woman who worked at the hospital, and one detail always stuck in my brain. They'd started renovating the attic, and then just stopped, like mid-project, left it half done. And I remember thinking, who does that? It felt like the house had been abandoned in a hurry, even though it hadn't. Anyway, first big thing. I was about 15, and I woke up in the middle of the night to my bedroom door slowly opening. I know how that sounds, but I was fully awake. I watched a shape, like an actual person, come into my room. It walked around the foot of my bed and went into the little side room where the boiler cupboard is. I remember being confused more than terrified at first, like my brain couldn't decide what it was seeing. And then I did the most unreasonable thing possible. I convinced myself I was half dreaming, and I fell back asleep. The next morning I woke up and both doors were open, my bedroom door and the boiler room door. I never left them like that. So I asked my parents if either of them had come in. They both looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Nope, nobody. Second big thing, about a year later, I was home alone, on the phone with my friend Maisie. I was in my room when I heard someone coming up the stairs. Slow, heavy steps. And then the sound moved past my door. My stomach just dropped. I called out, "Mom?" like a complete idiot because I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. And then something ran past my door. My door was closed, but I heard it, that quick, frantic rush, like someone sprinting down the hall. I yanked the door open and leaned over the banister, and I swear to you, I saw something, someone, bolt toward the kitchen. So I chased it. I don't know why. Pure adrenaline, I guess. I ran downstairs, went straight into the kitchen, and there was nothing. No one. No pets, no open doors. Just the kitchen, dead still, like it had been empty the whole time. I remember standing there, breathing hard, and feeling this cold embarrassment, like, what am I even doing? But I also remember thinking, I didn't imagine that. Third big thing. This one happened at my grand's house, just a few doors up the road. Her place always felt safer, like the kind of house where nothing bad could happen. That illusion didn't last. I was there one morning packing my bag for class. Her downstairs bathroom had this little corner behind the toilet where we kept cleaning stuff. A dustpan, a couple of brushes, that kind of thing. Everyone else had already gone upstairs to talk to Gran, so I was alone downstairs, zipping up my bag, when the bathroom door swung open like someone shoved it. And a brush flew out. Not slid, not toppled, flew, like it had been thrown from inside. Fourth big thing. This one is the one that makes my skin crawl even now, because it felt personal. I just started college. I came home one afternoon with shopping bags and a new coat. We were all in the living room, my mom, my granddad, and my little brother. And somehow we got onto the topic of my uncle who'd passed away. His ashes were still in the house, and my family was joking around like, "All right then, if you want to be scattered at the football ground, give us a sign." It was one of those moments where everyone laughs, and then it goes quiet for half a second. I went into the hallway to try on the coat. I put it on, checked the fit, and walked back into the living room to show everyone. And right then, from the kitchen, there was this loud, violent smash. I shouted upstairs at my granddad at first, thinking maybe he'd knocked something over, except he was standing right there in the living room with us. He even snapped back like, "What was that?" At the same time I asked. We all rushed into the kitchen and found the fruit bowl shattered on the floor. But here's the part that freaks me out. It hadn't just fallen off the table. It was far from the table, like it had been launched across the room, and the bowl had been sitting in the center of this big, heavy table, nowhere near an edge. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. Fifth big thing. This one is more recent, just a couple weeks ago. It was around 5 a.m., pitch black, and my mom's car alarm suddenly went off. We'd had that car for years, and I don't think we'd ever heard the alarm once. I ran into her room, half panicked, ready to help her turn it off before we woke up the whole street. She was already moving, halfway down the stairs. I looked out the front window, and we've got this stupid little Christmas doorstep mat that plays music when you step on it. We'd forgotten to put it away. Mom goes, "The doorstep's going off." And as she said it, the car alarm blared again. There was only a short pause between the alarms, like 10 seconds, then it screamed again. I couldn't see anyone outside. No shadow, no movement, nothing. So I signaled to my mom that it looked safe enough to check. She went out, and the driver's side door had been pried open. We called the police, but we told them not to send anyone urgently because whoever it was had clearly gone. Later that day, around mid-afternoon, my mom went to the neighbors to ask for their CCTV footage. Their camera covers our drive. And the footage showed basically nothing. No person, no car pulling up, no figure in a hoodie. Nothing except the car lights flashing from the alarm. That's the one that still messes with me, because I don't know what to believe. Break-in? Glitch? Something else? I can't pin it down, and that makes it worse. And on top of all that, there's the ongoing stuff. I catch these weird little orbs in videos sometimes, like bright floating dots that aren't there in real life. I get random handprints on my bedroom wall. It's painted a dark navy blue, so it shows marks really easily. But some prints are higher than I can reach, and some are bigger than my hands. And I'll see faces in steamed up glass, like in mirrors or windows, like something's trying to form a shape for just a second before it fades. I try to ignore it. I really do. I tell myself it's coincidence, or shadows, or my brain overreacting. But it's hard not to feel like the house notices me back. So, I've had this feeling my whole life that I'm not exactly alone, even when I'm by myself. Not in a dramatic way either, more like a quiet awareness. Like there are things around me that most people don't notice. Most of the time, it's honestly fine. In my house especially, there are a couple presences I've gotten used to. Almost like familiar roommates that don't talk. They don't feel threatening. If anything, the energy feels calm. Like they're just there, watching, passing through, minding their own business. But there's also one that doesn't feel like that at all. This one feels wrong, heavy, like the air gets thicker when it's near. And the worst part is, it doesn't seem tied to a place. I felt it in different rooms, different buildings, like it's attached to me, not the house. When it's close, my stomach drops for no reason. It's that sudden dread that doesn't belong to any thought in your head. It just arrives fully formed. And even now, talking about it, I swear I can feel that heaviness creeping up, like it notices when I'm thinking about it. Like it doesn't want to be named. Anyway, the experience that really sticks with me happened a few years back. I was younger, around 11, and I'd just switched bedrooms in my house. It wasn't a big move, just a new room, new layout. I remember standing there that first day and trying to brush off how weird it felt. I actually said out loud, because, yeah, I talk to myself when I'm alone. Something like, "This room feels different. Maybe the other room just had weird vibes." I tried to laugh it off, tried to be rational about it. Then I got ready for bed like normal. Lights out, blanket pulled up. That quiet, settling feeling when you're waiting to fall asleep. A few minutes passed, and I heard it. Scratching. Right on the wall next to my bed. Not a bump, not a creak. Scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly over paint. My whole body went tense, but I forced myself to play it down. I told myself it was the house. Pipes. My imagination. Anything. Eventually, I fell asleep. But here's the thing. This is the part that's hard to explain without sounding unreal. I've had these sleep experiences for as long as I can remember, where it feels like I'm awake in my room, but I'm not. It looks like my room. My bed is right where it should be. The darkness is the same. But there's always someone else there, some presence or figure, and I can't really move. I can talk, I can think, I can feel, but my body stays pinned in place. And then, every single time, there's this moment where I truly wake up and I can move again. Like a switch flips, and whoever or whatever was in the room just fades. Like the connection snaps and they can't stay anymore. So that night, I slipped into one of those. I didn't realize at first. I just woke up and I was in my room, staring at the dark ceiling, feeling that familiar stuck-in-place heaviness. It was quiet for a second. Too quiet. And then, something moved under my bed. An arm, an actual arm, slowly reached out from the darkness underneath, like it had been waiting there the whole time. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't fog. It had shape. It had weight. And it grabbed my wrist. I couldn't pull away. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't even scream. I just felt that cold grip clamp down like it owned me for that moment. And then I heard the voice, clear as if someone had leaned down next to my ear and whispered it. "Don't worry," it said. "I'm still here." And then, snap, I jolted awake for real. But I could still feel the hand on me. That's the part that makes my skin crawl even now. I was fully awake, fully able to move, but my body remembered that grip like it hadn't let go yet. I threw myself out of bed so fast I almost tripped. I backed away from the edge of the mattress and just stood there shaking, staring at the space under my bed like it might reach out again any second. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, not even close. I sat with my knees pulled up, trying not to cry too loudly, because I didn't want anyone to come in and tell me it was a nightmare. I didn't want someone to explain it away when I still felt the terror sitting on my chest like a weight. And I know people could call it a dream or sleep paralysis or whatever, but I've had normal nightmares. I've had bad dreams. I've had panic. This was different. This was the most fear I've ever felt in my life. Like something dark had wrapped itself around me and let me know it could touch me whenever it wanted. And honestly, I'm still scared it'll happen again, because I don't know how to stop it from using those moments, those half-awake, half-asleep cracks in reality, to get close. I just want it to leave me alone. Okay, so I need to tell you something that still makes me feel a little silly saying out loud, because I'm not the ghosts are real type. I'm usually the there's a logical explanation, calm down type. But this kept happening, and it got under my skin in a way I can't really shake. This was a few days before Christmas, like maybe 10 days out. I just finally crawled out of a nasty flu, and I was still in that weak, foggy stage where your body feels fine enough, but your brain is lagging behind. You know that kind of tired where you're awake, technically, but everything feels softened around the edges. So my bedroom setup matters here. My bed sits along the right wall, and if I'm lying down, I can see my door off to the left, like not straight ahead, but absolutely in my line of sight. On the back of the door, I've got this hook rack where I hang my everyday stuff, totes, jackets, scarves, that kind of thing. And a couple days before all this started, my friend Layla gave me this oversized coat to list online. It was one of those heavy, structured ones, nice fabric, kind of dramatic. I hung it on the rack without thinking about it. First night. I go to bed early because I'm still recovering. I'm drifting off, like that exact moment where you're about to disappear into sleep and you can't really track your thoughts anymore. And then, thunk. Something hits the floor. It jars me awake in that half-awake way, where you're not fully alert, but your body moves anyway. I sit up, squint through the dim light from the street lamp outside, and I see the coat on the ground near the door. Just there, like it slipped off. So I shuffle over, hang it back up, and climb into bed. No fear, no drama. I'm too sleepy to even question it. Second night, I stay up later. Around midnight, maybe a little after. I'm not as exhausted, but I'm still running on that recovery energy where sleep feels like it could swallow you whole. I'm falling asleep again. Same exact moment. Thunk. I swear to you, it was like a replay. Same sound, same timing, same weird jolt through my chest. I just lay there blinking for a second like, did that just happen again? But then the tiredness wins. I get up, put the coat back, and tell myself it's nothing. Third night is when it changed. Because third night, I wasn't sick tired. I wasn't delirious. I was just normal tired. Regular end-of-day, brain winding down tired. And once again, I'm slipping under. That warm, floaty edge of sleep. Funk. And this time, it hit me like cold water. Not the sound itself, the pattern. I sat up and felt this weird sensation, like my body recognized the scene before my brain did. Like, oh, we're doing this again. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but it honestly felt like time was stuttering, like the night was stuck on a tiny loop. The next morning, I checked everything like a person trying desperately to prove they're not losing it. I tugged on the coat. I shook the hooks a little. I pushed on the rack. I even switched which hook it was on. The rack didn't wiggle. The coat didn't slide. It felt secure, normal. So that evening, before bed, I stood there and tested it again. Pulled it gently, repositioned it, made sure the sleeves weren't dragging on something weird, made sure nothing else was half hanging. It looked perfect. And I remember thinking, half joking, all right, if it happens again, then I'm officially going to start getting freaked out. I'm sure you can guess what happened. That same night, right as I was about to fall asleep, thunk. The coat on the floor. Not once in a while. Not, oh, that happened again a few nights later. No, every night, for almost a week. Always at the same point in the night, right when I was fading out. Always the same sound. And this is the part that really messes with me. Every single time I reacted the same way. I'd wake up. I'd sit there in a fog. I'd get up like a sleepwalker. I'd hang it back up. I'd go back to bed. Even on nights when I told myself, if it falls, leave it. Just leave it on the floor. Prove you're in control. I still got up, like my body had memorized the script. And in my memory, it's all the same scene copied and pasted. The dim light, my blurred vision, the heavy shape on the floor by the door, my hand reaching for it, the little metal click of the hook. It's eerie, Not because it's violent or threatening, but because it's so repetitive it starts to feel unreal. Then I went to my grandparents' place for Christmas, and of course, nothing happened there. Different room, different bed, no coat on a door rack. Totally normal nights. But now I haven't gone back yet, and I'm honestly dreading it. Not because I truly think something evil is waiting for me. Please, I'm not trying to summon that energy. But because I don't like the idea of lying down in that room and waiting for the same moment to happen again. And the worst part is how it made me question myself. Like, did I hallucinate? Am I exaggerating? Was I just in some weird half-sleep state that made it feel identical every time? I don't know. I just know I started feeling nervous about falling asleep, which is such a horrible feeling because sleep is supposed to be the safe part of your day. So, that's it. That's the story. If you have a theory that isn't a demon is trying to murder you, I am genuinely begging you to share it. Because I want a normal explanation so badly. I want to go back to my apartment and sleep like a regular person again. So, I've had this feeling my whole life that I'm not exactly alone, even when I'm by myself. Not in a dramatic way either, more like a quiet awareness. Like there are things around me that most people don't notice. Most of the time, it's honestly fine. In my house especially, there are a couple presences I've gotten used to, almost like familiar roommates that don't talk. They don't feel threatening. If anything, the energy feels calm, like they're just there, watching, passing through, minding their own business. But there's also one that doesn't feel like that at all. This one feels wrong, heavy, like the air gets thicker when it's near. And the worst part is, it doesn't seem tied to a place. I've felt it in different rooms, different buildings, like it's attached to me, not the house. When it's close, my stomach drops for no reason. It's that sudden dread that doesn't belong to any thought in your head. It just arrives fully formed. And even now, talking about it, I swear I can feel that heaviness creeping up like it notices when I'm thinking about it. Like it doesn't want to be named. Anyway, the experience that really sticks with me happened a few years back. I was younger, around 11, and I'd just switched bedrooms in my house. It wasn't a big move, just a new room, new layout. I remember standing there that first day and trying to brush off how weird it felt. I actually said out loud, because yeah, I talk to myself when I'm alone. Something like, this room feels different. Maybe the other room just had weird vibes. I tried to laugh it off, tried to be rational about it. Then I got ready for bed like normal. Lights out, blanket pulled up. That quiet, settling feeling when you're waiting to fall asleep. A few minutes passed, and I heard it. Scratching. Right on the wall next to my bed. Not a bump, not a creak. Scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly over paint. My whole body went tense, but I forced myself to play it down. I told myself it was the house. Pipes. My imagination. Anything. Eventually, I fell asleep. But here's the thing. This is the part that's hard to explain without sounding unreal. I've had these sleep experiences for as long as I can remember, where it feels like I'm awake in my room, but I'm not. It looks like my room. My bed is right where it should be. The darkness is the same. But there's always someone else there, some presence or figure, and I can't really move. I can talk, I can think, I can feel, but my body stays pinned in place. And then, every single time, there's this moment where I truly wake up and I can move again. Like a switch flips, and whoever or whatever was in the room just fades. Like the connection snaps and they can't stay anymore. So that night, I slipped into one of those. I didn't realize it first. I just woke up and I was in my room, staring at the dark ceiling, feeling that familiar, stuck-in-place heaviness. It was quiet for a second. Too quiet. And then, something moved under my bed. An arm, an actual arm, slowly reached out from the darkness underneath, like it had been waiting there the whole time. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't fog. It had shape. It had weight. And it grabbed my wrist. I couldn't pull away. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't even scream. I just felt that cold grip clamp down like it owned me for that moment. And then I heard the voice, clear as if someone had leaned down next to my ear and whispered it. "Don't worry," it said. "I'm still here." And then, snap. I jolted awake for real, but I could still feel the hand on me. That's the part that makes my skin crawl even now. I was fully awake, fully able to move, but my body remembered that grip like it hadn't let go yet. I threw myself out of bed so fast I almost tripped. I backed away from the edge of the mattress and just stood there, shaking, staring at the space under my bed like it might reach out again any second. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, not even close. I sat with my knees pulled up, trying not to cry too loudly, because I didn't want anyone to come in and tell me it was a nightmare. I didn't want someone to explain it away when I still felt the terror sitting on my chest like a weight. And I know people could call it a dream or sleep paralysis or whatever, but I've had normal nightmares. I've had bad dreams. I've had panic. This was different. This was the most fear I've ever felt in my life, like something dark had wrapped itself around me and let me know it could touch me whenever it wanted. And honestly, I'm still scared it'll happen again, because I don't know how to stop it from using those moments, those half-awake, half-asleep cracks in reality to get close. I just want it to leave me alone. Okay, so this whole thing kicked off in the most annoying way possible. My cat Miso waking me up by licking my face like I'm a salt lamp. It's late, I'm half asleep, and I'm thinking, fine, he wants out. I head downstairs, 2 flights because apparently I chose cardio as a lifestyle, and I go to open the back door. And that's when we both see it. Down at the bottom of the garden, by the gate, there's this figure. And the garden is already dark, but this thing is darker than the dark. Like a cutout. Like someone erased a person-shaped chunk of night. It's tall, too, easily 8 or 9 feet, and it's moving slowly, almost casually, like it belongs there more than I do. It's tall enough that it kind of swallows the fence line when it passes. Now here's the part that got me. Miso loves the garden. He's obsessed. He'd sell me for a warm paving stone out there. But this time, he stops dead. Won't step outside. Not even one paw. Just refuses. Like he's suddenly become a very principled indoor cat. So I'm standing there with the door cracked open, and I actually say, out loud, because apparently I like making things worse. "Yeah, I don't blame you. This is weird." Then I just shut the door. Not in a panic, not slamming it, just, nope. And we go back up to bed. I tell myself it's nothing. I'm not easily spooked, and I figured maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But Miso, who normally sleeps wherever he collapses, parks himself right by the bedroom door that night. Like he's on duty. That was unusual. Really unusual. Second night, same routine. Miso wakes me up again. This time he licks my eyelid, which is horrific, by the way, like being kissed awake by a damp moth. He's purring and making those bubbly little sounds cats do when they're pleased with themselves. I sit up, blinking, and I look toward the doorway. And it's there. Not in the garden this time. Not far away. just standing in the doorway like it's checking in. Same shape, same void blackness, like a hooded figure but without texture. No fabric, no detail, just absence. And weirdly, I don't feel terrified. There's no sense of malice, no get out instinct. And Miso isn't freaking out either. He's just there, calm. So I do what any exhausted person does when reality starts acting up. I mumble something along the lines of, I can't be bothered with this. And, do you mind? I don't even wait to see if it leaves. I just roll over and go back to sleep. Like I'm setting a boundary with the universe from under my duvet. Third night, no cat wake up. I wake up on my own because I need the toilet. I stumble into the bathroom, barely alive, and I flick on the light. And there it is. Standing in the bathtub. Just in the tub. Like it booked a room and that's its spot. Same cloaked outline, same hollow black void, completely silent. And again, I don't feel threatened. I'm not saying it felt normal. It absolutely did not. But it didn't feel dangerous. So I use the toilet because what else am I going to do? Hold it out of respect? And I actually talk to it, like it's a weird roommate. I say, if you're going to make this a regular thing, you'll have to get used to me, and I'll get used to you. Then I tell it good night, like an idiot, like a polite idiot, and I go back to bed. After that, nothing. No more sightings. But here's what's left behind. This faint, lingering sensation, like being watched over. Not in a creepy way, more like a gentle presence, almost protective. And honestly, I don't want it. I don't need a shadow guardian. I'm good. Please stop. And I think my total indifference, my very tired, very unbothered attitude, kind of shut the whole thing down. Like once it realized I wasn't going to feed it fear or fascination, it just moved on. The only reason I take it seriously at all is Miso. He's my litmus test. He clocked it before I fully did, and his behavior changed in a way that felt deliberate. Since those 3 nights, he's been completely normal. No more doorway sleeping, no weird wake-ups, just regular cat nonsense. So yeah, 3 nights, a silent void figure, a cat who suddenly had better judgment than me. And I'm left sitting here thinking, what on earth was that? Anyway, if you've got thoughts, I'm listening, because I'd love for it to make sense, even if it never happens again. You know how sometimes life feels a little too neatly stitched together? Like, I'll be going about a totally normal day, watching something, hearing a random phrase, having an ordinary conversation, and then, not long after, that same idea shows up again somewhere completely unrelated. Not in a déjà vu way, more like an echo, a callback I didn't ask for. I don't even know what to call it. Some people would say synchronicity. Others would shrug and go, coincidence. Your brain is just pattern hunting. And honestly, maybe. I'm not trying to prove anything cosmic. It just happens so suddenly and so cleanly that it throws me off every time. I've tried bringing it up to a couple people I trust, my friend Mara, for example, and she just laughed and told me my mind is basically a highlight reel machine. And that's fair. If you haven't felt it, it probably sounds like I'm making a big deal out of nothing. But there's this one book that's always stuck with me, The Roots of Coincidence by Arthur Koestler. He talks about a guy named Lucas Kamler. Well, in the book he's called something like that, who seemed to notice the same kind of repeating clusters of events. And there's this part where the idea is basically, What if the recurrence of similar things in close time and space isn't just noise? What if it happens often enough that it messes with what we even mean by coincidence? I'm not quoting it perfectly, but the feeling of it is, at a certain point, coincidence stops being a satisfying explanation because it starts showing up like a rule instead of an exception. And that's the thing. With me, it's usually not a big dramatic event. It's smaller than that. It's a word, a phrase, a concept, something oddly specific that bridges two moments that shouldn't have any bridge at all. And it happens within a day, maybe two. Here's the one that really got me recently. So, last week, I had the evening news on. I wasn't even fully paying attention, just half watching the way people do. And then a segment comes on about the Pope inaugurating the 2025 Jubilee of Hope. That word hit my ears, Jubilee, and I remember thinking, you don't hear that every day. Then, the very next day, maybe not even 24 hours later, I'm playing A Plague Tale: Requiem. I'd already been in the middle of it for a few days, just slowly working through the chapters. And I get to a part where the main character, let's call her Alara, arrives on this island with her little brother, and they're talking, and suddenly she says something about the Jubilee. And I just froze. Because tell me honestly, how often does that word show up in your life? In a random news segment, and then in a dark medieval game, back to back. It's not like those two things have any connection. The Vatican and a grim story about survival and plague aren't exactly neighbors. But my brain wouldn't let it go. It latched on like, nope, that's a link, that's a thread. And the tighter the time frame is, the more intense it feels, like it's tapping me on the shoulder. Most of the time, nothing like this happens. Days go by and everything is just normal. But every once in a while, it returns. Another little echo, another weird overlap, another tiny, why that word? Why now? Moment. And here's the part that makes me laugh at myself. I'm not doing what that guy in the book did. I'm not keeping records. No spreadsheets, no notes, no archive of proof. I just notice it, feel unsettled for a minute, and then move on until it happens again. Still, I can't help wondering. And I guess what I really want to know is, do you ever get this? Not the vague sense of everything is connected, but those specific, oddly timed repeats. The kind that make you pause and go, wait, seriously? Again? And if you have, how often do you think this kind of thing happens to people, even if they don't talk about it? So, I'm in my late 20s now, and I've lived through a lot, stuff most people only hear about on the news. Addiction in the house, violence, being around people who didn't make it. That kind of darkness was just around me for years, like background noise I couldn't turn off. And for almost a decade, it's felt like something else has been around too. I first noticed it when I had my oldest. At the time, I didn't even want to call it anything. I just knew there was a presence. It started small, almost like it was testing the waters. The TV would click on in the middle of the night. Then the second I stepped into the living room, it would shut off like it hadn't done anything. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway when everyone was asleep. Sometimes I'd wake up and the air would feel heavy, like someone was standing too close, just staring. For a long time, it stayed in that minor lane. Creepy, sure, but manageable. Like a bad roommate you try not to acknowledge. But a couple years ago, when my drug use got really ugly, and I was in relationships that were unsafe, it changed. That's when it started to feel angry. Loud. Like it wanted me to know it was there, and it was in control. We lived in this older place back then, and the basement was the worst part. I remember one night hearing a crash down there, like something big got shoved off a shelf in the laundry area. It was loud enough that my whole body went cold. I ran upstairs and slept on the couch because I wanted to be closer to my kids and my mom, like being near them would keep me safe. And then, this is the part that still makes my stomach drop. Out of the basement, clear as day, I heard a man's voice say, "I'm still waiting on you." That was in the fall of 2023. I've heard plenty of terrifying things in my life, but that one, it settled into me. Things spiraled after that. My kids went to live with my uncle for a while because I wasn't okay, and I'm not going to pretend I was. I let the wrong people into my home because I wanted to keep disappearing into that life. I'm not proud of any of it, but I'm also not that person anymore. I'm 10 months clean now, and I mean that with my whole chest. Back then, though, the energy in that house got so dark it felt contaminated. And the thing, him, got worse. I started calling him Mason, just to have a name to throw at it instead of feeling powerless. Anyone who came over wouldn't go near the basement. They'd stand at the top of the stairs like the air itself was warning them. Sometimes I'd hear heavy breathing right outside my bedroom door. Slow, deliberate. And I had this thick blanket hanging in the doorway because I didn't even like having the door open. I'd lie there listening, heart pounding, and finally I'd rip the blanket aside, ready to snap at whoever was messing with me. No one would be there. We tried to smudge at one point, traditional, the way my family taught me. I'm indigenous, and that matters in how we do things, what we believe, what we don't do. And smudging while there's active drug use? That's a hard no in our culture. It isn't just bad vibes, it's disrespectful. And honestly, it felt like it made him angrier, like I'd thrown something sacred into a mess and he wanted to punish me for it. But Mason? Mason followed. He's not as violent now, not like the basement days. But he's still around, and now he plays these weird little games. He mimics my partner constantly. I'll hear my name, in my partner's voice from the other room. Or I'll hear footsteps on the stairs like someone's coming down to talk to me. So I look up, and the stairwell is empty. When my kids are away visiting their dad, I sometimes hear a little girl in the middle room, soft laughing, then crying, like it's switching back and forth. The first time I heard it, I told myself it was pipes, or the house settling, or my brain being tired. But then a friend stayed over once and froze mid-sentence and went, do you have a kid here right now?" No, I didn't. So now I'm firm about it. I don't beg. I don't negotiate. I say it out loud, like I'm talking to a person standing right in front of me. You do not do that when my children are home. You do not mess with my kids. Ever. And if I'm being honest, at this point it's less terror and more exhaustion. He annoys me. He acts up more when a living man is around, like he's got something to prove. Like he's jealous of the space my partner takes up in our home. Some nights it feels like he's sulking. Other nights it feels like he's just trying to remind me, I'm still here. I've wondered what he is. In some circles, people might call him a djinn. Where I'm from in Canada, and in my community, we use different words depending on the nation and the teachings, so I'm careful with labels. I just know he feels like a man, a dark one, something that got close during the worst seasons of my life and decided it liked staying. And I don't really want advice. I'm not writing this because I think someone on the internet has the perfect answer. I just needed to say it somewhere, out loud, in my own words, while I'm standing here trying to get supper on the table, trying to be a good mom, trying to stay steady. Because I've survived a lot, and I'm still here. Even if, whatever that is still here too. So, picture this. It's the mid-90s and my parents are feeling brave, and maybe a little too optimistic, when they buy this gorgeous old colonial in the hills of upstate Vermont. Big windows, creaky wood floors, a wraparound porch, and yes, an annoyingly perfect white picket fence. The price was suspiciously low, and the house had been sitting on the market forever, but my parents were like, "We're getting a deal." We did not, in fact, get a deal. We got roommates, invisible ones. At first it was almost normal, like old house normal. One evening we're all at the kitchen table and this thick smell of cigarette smoke just rolls in like someone lit up right beside us. Only nobody in my family smoked, and my dad and I both had asthma, so it wasn't just weird, it was immediately miserable. My mom, bless her, didn't panic. She just kind of stared into the air and said, very calmly, "Okay, that's enough. Please don't do that in here." And I swear to you, it stopped. Like whoever it was went, "Fair point," and never did it again. Then the thermostat started acting up. Not like, "Oops, it's cold," acting up. Like it would be cranked to 90 degrees out of nowhere. One of those old dial thermostats you have to physically turn with your hand. Of course, everyone assumed it was me. Because I was a teenage girl, and apparently teenage girls secretly love living inside a sauna. I'd be like, "I did not touch it." And they'd be like, "Sure, Ellie." That wasn't even my name, by the way. They just blamed me with confidence. But the real fear didn't start until the footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate footsteps, like boots, moving through the house. Here's the fun part. It only happened when one of us was home alone. So imagine being 15, hearing someone walk across the downstairs hallway, and realizing you're the only human being in the building. I genuinely thought we had an intruder. More than once, I ended up hiding under my bed or wedged into a closet, holding my breath so hard I got dizzy, waiting for someone, anyone, to come home. And every time, nothing. No doors forced open, no missing items, no sign of anybody, just that sound. Like the house wanted me to know I wasn't alone, but also wanted to make sure I couldn't prove it. My brother, his name was Noah in this version of my life, started hearing the footsteps up in our unfinished attic. Sometimes they'd come down the hallway and stop right outside his door, like whoever it was just standing there, listening. And then our dogs got involved. We had 2 big mutts, the kind that normally think every visitor is a new best friend. Suddenly, they'd stare at empty corners and start barking. Deep, ugly barking. Growling, snarling, hackles up. Like they could see something we couldn't. Eventually, it escalated to this one awful night where one dog started whimpering and cowering like it was being cornered or hit. Nothing was touching it. Nothing we could see anyway. Noah, who was a Marine and had the patience of a man who slept through worse than ghosts, finally snapped and shouted into the air, full volume, no filter, basically telling whatever was in the house to leave the dog alone. And after that, the dog stopped doing it. Immediately. Like the whole thing had been waiting for someone to set a boundary. There were certain rooms that felt wrong. You know how you can walk into a place and the temperature is the same, the lighting is the same, everything looks normal, and yet your body goes, nope? For me it was the basement, the dining room, and this central hallway that connected everything. It felt like being watched by something furious, something that wanted to push me out of my own home. I'd speed walk through those areas, never linger, always avoiding eye contact with nothing, and my stomach dropped. Because I hadn't told him. I hadn't even admitted it out loud to myself. But yeah, he felt it too. That angry presence wasn't imaginary. It was consistent, like it had a favorite spot and a bad attitude. When we had sleepovers, friends would swear something messed with them while they slept downstairs, tugging at blankets, whispering, sudden panic out of nowhere. One friend woke up sobbing and refused to go back in the basement. Another said she felt someone lean over her like they were breathing just above her face. And the worst part was how matter-of-fact it all became. Like, oh yeah, that happens. I had my own moment that still makes my skin prickle. I was in the living room, looking out the front window, and I saw a middle-aged man walk up the front steps. Clear as day. He reached for the doorknob, opened the front door, and then he just vanished. Like he dissolved. Not walked out of sight. Not maybe I blinked. He was there, and then he wasn't. 5 feet in front of me. I remember standing frozen, hand half raised, thinking, if I scream, will anyone believe me? Another time, Noah was home with his tutor, this sweet woman named Marisol, and they heard a woman screaming upstairs. Not a creak, not a bump, a full, terrified scream. They ran up, checked every room. Nothing. No TV on, no neighbors, no explanation. And the lights. Oh my God, the lights. I used to blame wiring because old houses are weird, right? Except sometimes the flickering would respond like it was listening. Like you could actually say, okay, was that you? And the lights would pulse or flutter back, almost like a reply. It wasn't constant chaos, but it was constant enough that you stopped thinking, if something happens, and started thinking, when something happens. Now, here's the part people don't expect. Not everything in that house felt evil. My bedroom, weirdly, felt protected. Like there was a boundary there the darker stuff didn't want to cross. I could breathe in my room. I could sleep. It was the only place that felt like it belonged to me. And a few times, this is hard to explain without sounding like I'm making it up, I saw these soft, glowing orbs. Not like dust in sunlight, like actual points of light moving with intention. Once I woke up and the whole room felt full, warm, like a presence that was gentle and steady, almost comforting. Another time I saw what I can only describe as an angelic shape, more like a feeling than a face, but unmistakably protective. Those moments changed me. They made the whole situation feel more complicated than haunted house equals bad. It was like the house was a crossroads, and not everyone passing through was there to hurt us. Noah, though, he got the worst of it. He dealt with horrible sleep paralysis, waking up locked in his body, feeling something press down on his chest, hearing things, sensing something right beside him. And he wasn't the type to dramatize. If he said something was happening, it was happening. My parents owned that house for almost 20 years before they finally sold it. By then, I think we were all just tired. The kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. And here's what's eerie. Since they sold it, the house has changed hands a bunch of times. People move in, and they don't stay. It keeps selling again and again, often for less than it should be worth for a beautiful colonial on a big piece of land. Like the house can't hold on to anyone for long. Living there wasn't always miserable, but it wasn't exactly peaceful either. It taught me things I never asked to learn. How to set boundaries with something you can't see. How to protect your energy. How to tell the difference between a presence that's just there and one that wants to cause harm. And even though it's been years since I lived there, I still dream about that house at least once a week. In the dreams, I'm walking those hallways again, avoiding the dining room, feeling that glare in the basement. Part of me honestly believes the place was some kind of doorway, like a thin spot. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How's your day going? Drop a comment below. And by the way, thank you so much for supporting the channel and sharing so many of your mysterious experiences with us. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's jump into today's spooky stories. Okay, so I need to start by telling you, This isn't one of those creaky floorboards and an overactive imagination stories. This was real life for my family. Real enough that even now, when I picture that house, my chest tightens a little. My mom grew up in this old place right on the edge of the Ohio River. Not near it, on it. Like the house was constantly leaning toward the water, as if it was listening to something down below. It was over 100 years old, and it had that heavy, sunken-in feeling old houses get. Like they're full of memories they don't want to share. Later on, someone told the family it had been built on land that used to be a burial site. Native land. Sacred land. And I know people can roll their eyes at that kind of detail, but it matters in this story because the whole house felt like it knew it didn't belong there. My granddad, everyone called him Pop, was the kind of man who could fix anything with his hands and didn't believe in anything he couldn't measure. Ghosts were nonsense. Bad dreams. Drafts. Settling wood. That was always his answer. But the house didn't care what he believed. The first thing my mom remembers, she was about 8. She was in her bedroom, playing quietly. Nothing spooky, just being a kid. She had this big stuffed bear sitting in the corner, like a lot of kids do. And without anyone touching it, the bear's head slowly turned toward her. Not a little wobble, not falling over. Turned, deliberate. Then, it tilted like it was studying her. She screamed so hard she felt it in her throat, and she ran downstairs like the floor was on fire. And nobody could explain it, so the explanation became, it didn't happen. Except, it kept happening. By the time she was 12, the house had patterns, like it had routines. She and her sisters would be brushing their hair at night, normal, sleepy little kid stuff, and they'd see a man appear in the mirror behind them. Not a reflection trick. Not maybe. A man where no man should be, standing too close, like he'd been waiting. And then there were the sounds. Almost every night, downstairs, they'd hear what sounded like a party upstairs. Footsteps, laughter, the clink of something that could have been glasses. Then, out of nowhere, a gunshot. A woman screaming. And then, the unmistakable, sickening sound of someone tumbling down the wooden stairs. Thump after thump after thump. Here's the part that still makes my skin prickle. If you were sleeping upstairs, you didn't hear any of it. Like whatever was happening was meant for the people downstairs. Like it was being performed. My grandma, let's call her Lena, wasn't dramatic. She was tired, hardworking, practical. But one night she woke up and saw a man standing at the foot of the bed. He was wearing a brown robe, the kind of thing you'd picture on someone from another century. And he wasn't fuzzy or see-through or misty. He looked solid. He smiled at her, slow and wrong, then held his hands out slightly, almost like he was presenting himself. And then he backed out of the room and vanished. Just gone. And my granddad, Pop, still insisted the house was fine. The worst thing, the thing that my mom still won't talk about for long, happened when she was around 14. She woke up late at night and went downstairs for water. The house was dark in that thick way, where darkness feels like a weight. And as she passed the back door, she saw a light through the window. A green glow. Not porch light yellow. Not moonlight. Green. Like a flame that shouldn't exist. Then it turned its head toward her. And it smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not curiosity. A smile like it was pleased she'd finally noticed it. She couldn't move. She said it felt like time stretched out and pinned her in place, and when she finally found her voice and screamed, that thing lunged, ran straight toward the house. My grandparents came running, and my mom bolted into them, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. To this day, if you ask her what she saw, she'll tell you, flat out, that she looked into the devil's face. Now, my granddad was a long-haul truck driver, so he was gone a lot, and I think that's part of why he stayed stubborn about it. He wasn't there for the worst of it, not like the women were. They lived with it daily. The dread wasn't occasional, it was part of the house. Eventually, Grandma Lena moved out. She just couldn't do it anymore. But Pop stayed because he refused to be chased out of his own home. That was who he was, sweet, loyal, and so stubborn it was almost unbelievable. Years later, my mom and her sisters had kids, us. And here's what's wild. Nobody sat us down and said, "Hey, by the way, that house is haunted." They'd just say things like, "We love that place," and then pause, like they were swallowing the rest of the sentence. Or, "Stuff happened there," like it was a weather report. But we went all the time because we adored Pop. He was our safe person, and even though the house was creepy, it pulled at us, like it didn't want to be alone. I used to go over with my sister and 2 cousins. We played in this overgrown field beside the house where the grass was so tall it brushed our faces. We had this game, kind of like hide and seek mixed with calling out to find each other. One late afternoon, we were laughing and running, the grass swaying like waves, when we heard a voice say, low and calm, "The hunter is coming." We froze. We thought it was my cousin, let's call him Eli, because he loved messing with us. But the voice didn't sound like a kid. It sounded older, too steady. We yelled his name. No answer. Then we heard it again, closer this time, like it was right in front of us in the grass. "The hunter is coming." We panicked and sprinted toward the house, and then we stopped cold, because through the living room window, we saw Eli's shadow on the wall. If Eli was inside, who was speaking in the field? We burst into the living room, hearts hammering, and the shadow was still there, until we flipped on the lights. Empty room. No one. We ran straight to Pop's bedroom, and there was Eli, asleep on the bed like he hadn't moved in an hour, while Pop sat watching TV, completely oblivious. We told Pop about the voice, and even though he didn't believe in ghosts, he believed in danger. He grabbed what he kept for protection and went outside, checked the field, walked the perimeter, searched the yard. Nothing. Not a footprint. Not a sound. That night, all 4 of us slept on the floor in Pop's room, like a little pile of scared puppies. And the house kept doing what it always did. Shadows shifting down the hallway, soft whispers where nobody stood, and upstairs, that same awful routine. Party noise, gunshot, woman screaming, body tumbling down the stairs. And we stayed anyway, because Pop was there, and we weren't going to leave him alone in that house. There were smaller things too, things that felt almost petty, like whatever lived there enjoyed little power plays. Like when we'd watch horror shows we absolutely shouldn't have been watching, and the old TV, this heavy, clunky thing you had to turn on by hand, would shut itself off, but only during that one show. Every time, we'd scream and run to Pop's room, and the whole cycle would repeat another weekend, another visit, another year. We didn't tell our parents for a long time. We thought we'd get in trouble, or we thought nobody would believe us. When we finally admitted it as teenagers, my mom and her sisters went quiet. And then they started sharing things they'd never told us, things worse than what we experienced. And suddenly it wasn't just kids being scared. It was 3 generations of the same house, the same feeling, the same presence. Later, people tried to explain it. The house was ancient. The river was right there. There was even this huge electrical tower built not too far behind the property, close enough that you could see it clearly from the back hill. Some folks said electromagnetic fields can mess with your brain, make you hallucinate, make groups of people feel paranoid or see things. Maybe. But I'll tell you the truth. Even if you gave me the cleanest scientific explanation in the world, it wouldn't erase the way that place felt. Like we were guests who'd overstayed on sacred ground. Like something watched us and waited. Pop passed away a long time ago, over 2 decades now. And the house? It's gone too. It was torn down years later, and the land got turned into a public park. Sometimes I think about going, standing where the back door used to be, looking out toward the river and just feeling close to him again. But then another part of me remembers that green glow, that voice in the grass, those footsteps above our heads. And I can't help thinking, when they dug up that land, when they broke the house apart, what if something that had been trapped there finally got loose? People say spirits don't forget. And honestly, I don't think that house ever did. So, ever since I moved, I haven't felt like myself. Not even close. The place we're in now used to belong to this very devout family. Like, the kind where every wall has something watching you. Crosses, saint pictures, little framed prayers, the whole thing. And there were these paintings everywhere too. Not valuable, not charming, just unsettling. Like they were made with love, but also with a heavy kind of intensity that lingers in a room. We cleared out most of it when we moved in, but I swear the house still kept the vibe. Like you can remove the objects, but not whatever they left behind. There's this one room in particular. Technically, it's a bedroom, but it's basically a storage closet with a bunk bed shoved into it. No real window, just this cramped, dead air box. The previous owners had their 2 daughters sleeping in there, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say it feels like a sealed compartment. We call it the drawer room, because bedroom feels like a lie. The furniture we inherited is old and stiff and uncomfortable, and it has that creepy old house smell you can never fully scrub out. But we can't afford to replace it yet, so we live with it. We try to make it ours. We really do. And then, the noises started. At first it was small stuff, soft sounds at night, like murmuring through a wall. But it didn't match anything outside. You know how you can usually tell when it's neighbors, or the building settling, or a car passing? This was different. It was too close, too specific, like a voice that almost resolves into words, and then doesn't. Like your brain keeps trying to grab onto it. And I moved here at the worst possible time. I'm in Italy, near Rome, and it was a special Holy Year kind of situation. Everything was crowded, rents were shooting up, and there were basically no options unless you wanted to pay something insane. So we took this house because it was what we could get. Simple as that. But from day one, I felt squeezed. Not physically trapped, but like the house itself was narrow. Like the hallway air was too thick. Like every corner leaned inward by an inch. Even when the place is genuinely clean, like objectively tidy, it looks wrong. Like it never quite resets. Like the mess is invisible, but permanent. And then my body started falling apart. At first I thought it was stress. Moving stress makes sense, right? But it wasn't just one sickness. It was constant. For almost 2 months, I was sick on and off. Colds, flu symptoms, fevers, sore throat, fatigue. The kind of thing where you keep thinking, okay, this is the last one, and then it comes back again like it's scheduled. Time passes, and instead of improving, it gets worse. A year and a few months in, I realized I couldn't even remember what normal felt like. The first half year, I was sick for most of it, like I'd get a short break and then crash again. And then one of the episodes got so bad I ended up in the hospital with brutal stomach pain. like deep, twisting pain that wouldn't stop. They ran test after test after test. Nothing. No explanation, no clear cause, just me, curled up and miserable, being told, everything looks fine. And it's not mold. We checked. Everyone always asks that first. Mold, damp, bad ventilation. But no, the house is dry. There's no obvious culprit. Which somehow makes it worse, because at least mold would be a villain with a name. Like freak accidents. I stabbed my hand while cooking, full-on puncture wound, blood everywhere. Then, not long after that, I almost sliced the tip of my finger off. Another ER visit. After that, there was a third accident where I honestly just sat there holding pressure like, I can't do this again, and I dealt with it myself. It healed, luckily, but the fact that I even reached that point, that's not me. I don't usually live like that. The cruelest part is, we moved here because it's close to the sea. The sea is my favorite thing. It's the one place my brain goes quiet. And we're so close, like 20 minutes away. We both work from home, so in theory we could go all the time, even just for an hour at sunset. But I barely went. All summer, months of perfect beach weather, I was either sick, recovering, or literally stitched up. We went maybe a dozen times total, and every time I stayed home, hearing the waves in my imagination instead of actually being there, I felt this heavy sadness like I was being punished for wanting something simple. Then I had a stretch where I thought, maybe it's over. A couple of good months, I started to hope again. And now it's back, only different. It started as these unbearable headaches, like pressure behind my eyes. Then my jaw started hurting, then my teeth, then my ear, like the pain couldn't decide where to live, so it just kept moving around. I'd have a few okay days and then get slammed again. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Like my body is doing this exhausting cycle where it barely lets me breathe before dragging me under again. And every test says I'm fine. I'm in my 20s. Before this house, I'd been to the ER maybe once in my entire life. Now it's multiple times in a short span, and there were at least 2 more times I probably should have gone but didn't, because I'm tired of being looked at like I'm a mystery that isn't worth solving. Even my dog changed here. He's more reactive, more alert, more jumpy, like he's constantly listening for something I can't hear. I tell myself it's just a new environment, new smells, different routines, but in my gut, it doesn't feel that simple. And I know how this sounds, I do. But I genuinely feel like this house doesn't like me. Like it's rejecting me. Like it's pushing back. Like it's pressing its thumb into my life until I'm too exhausted to fight it. My partner, Lena, eats the same food I do, lives in the same rooms, breathes the same air. She's fine. She gets tired sometimes, normal stuff, but she's not constantly sick. So it's not food poisoning. It's not something we're both exposed to, not in any obvious way. It feels aimed. And I hate myself for even thinking that. And then there are the little things. Electronics turning on and off with no input. Lights flickering when nothing else is happening. A charger that works one day and not the next. Stuff that could totally be old wiring, totally explainable, except it always seems to happen when I'm already overwhelmed. Like the house is adding one more tiny insult just to remind me it can. I'm constantly in pain or discomfort, and nothing shows up on paper. No proof, no neat diagnosis, just this grinding, never-ending sense of wrong. So I'm asking, quietly, honestly, has anyone ever felt like this? Like a place can get under your skin? Like you're losing your mind, but you're also not, because your body is the one screaming first. So, I've been sitting with my thoughts the last few days, just kind of replaying the past few years in my head. And out of nowhere, this whole stretch of time came rushing back to me, like my mind dug it up on purpose. It started in 2021 when I moved into this upscale apartment complex just outside Boston. It was one of those places that looks like a hotel. Bright lobby, polished hallways, everything luxury on paper. And for the first week, it actually felt like I'd finally landed somewhere safe. Then things got off. About a week after I moved in, someone crashed into the parking garage door. The door had one of those sensors where it lifts automatically when you drive up. After the crash, it barely worked, and it took forever to get fixed, like months. That alone was annoying, but then the key fobs started acting weird too. Some days they'd work on certain doors. Some days they wouldn't work at all, like nothing would open. Picture this. I'm coming home carrying groceries, going door to door around the entire building like I'm trying to break into my own place, because every entrance just refuses to recognize me. There were nights I ended up slipping in through the garage because it was the only way. And it's hard to explain, but the whole thing felt deliberate, like the building was deciding when to let me in. Then one evening after work, I pulled into the garage and I saw something that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. There was this jester-looking figure, black and white outfit, like a checker pattern, crouched low beside another car. And it wasn't looking at me directly. It was watching me through the car's side mirror, like it wanted me to notice without fully turning its head. I froze. I remember my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. And the second I realized it was focused on me, I backed out and left the garage entirely. And it followed me. Not for long, maybe a couple 100 feet down the street, but long enough that my brain couldn't explain it away as a prank. It wasn't a ghost, but it also didn't move like a normal person. The best way I can describe it is, it felt like a spirit wearing a shape, something pretending. After that, I tried to convince myself it was a one-time thing. Stress, lack of sleep, city weirdness. But then came the morning with the smell. It was a Saturday, early, around 8 a.m., and I woke up because something in the air felt wrong before I even opened my eyes. And the smell, I don't even know how to describe it properly. Like burnt fruit and alcohol. Like someone had scorched peach schnapps and pumped it through the vents. It wasn't smoke exactly. It was chemical and sweet and ruined. At the same time, my neighbors down the hall were being loud, shouting, arguing. A couple, and they spoke a language I didn't understand, so it wasn't like I could make out what was happening. But the volume and the intensity of it felt like it was bleeding straight through the walls. My apartment had two views. One side looked toward a little strip with a liquor store, and the other side overlooked this lot where yellow school buses were parked, like a staging area. So the first thing I did was go to the bedroom window and look out at the bus lot. And there he was. A person, at least shaped like a person, wearing a rabbit mask, dressed head to toe in black, standing still and staring right up at my window. At first, he was in the middle of the lot. Then he climbed onto one of the parked buses, sat or crouched inside it for maybe half a minute, and then stepped back out and looked straight at me again. And what messed with me the most was the security guard. There was always a guard near that lot, always. But that morning, there was nobody. No guard, no car, nothing. I kept watching because I didn't know what else to do. He walked up and down between the buses, slow and deliberate, never fully breaking eye contact. And then I went to the living room window, the side facing the liquor store, and I saw this red beam of light cutting through my living room. Not like a glow, not like a reflection I could easily explain. It was a sharp, straight line of red light, like something was aiming through the window into my apartment. I couldn't even figure out where it came from. I remember stepping back so fast I nearly fell. That's when I panicked in a way I don't usually panic. I grabbed my phone and tried calling 911, and my calls kept dropping. Over and over, like it would start to ring and then just die. So I called an Uber. I threw a few things in a bag, and yeah, I grabbed something for protection. Not because I wanted to do anything, but because my body was screaming at me that I wasn't safe. I took the Uber to a casino a couple hours away and stayed there for a few days, because it was the first place I could think of that had cameras, people, lights, something solid. But even on the way there, the road felt wrong. There were broken down cars in weird spots, like they'd been abandoned mid-thought. And when I got close to the casino, I swear I saw these strange figures outside. People standing too still, moving too sharply, watching cars go by like they were waiting for something. I told my friends who lived out of state. I told them everything. Most of them didn't believe me. You know that feeling when you can hear someone's doubt through the phone? Like they're listening politely, but already filing it under, "You're stressed." I begged one of them to call the police on my behalf because I couldn't get through. I didn't even know what I wanted the police to do. I just wanted someone official to acknowledge that something was wrong. When I finally went back after the weekend, I called out of work that Monday. I slept like my body had been poisoned. I woke up feeling grimy, foggy, like I'd been breathing dirty air. And then the building's fire alarm went off. The whole building, full alarm. And it wasn't one of those quick chirps, it was the real thing. I ran out, down the stairs, outside into the courtyard with everyone else. And when I got out there, the lights lining the walkway, those expensive modern path lights, were smashed. Not one or two, like 10 of them in a row, shattered like someone went down the line destroying them on purpose. I called the management office and they told me the fire alarm was just an electrical issue. An electrical issue. Like that explained everything. And then a wave of new tenants moved in, all at once. I don't mean like a few people over a week. I mean it felt like an entire floor changed over in a day or two. Moving trucks, unfamiliar faces, non-stop activity. It gave the building this strange feeling, like the atmosphere shifted. That summer, I went on a run one morning and got startled near a railroad crossing because I felt something shove me. Not a bump, not me tripping. A push, right before the crossing, like a hand in the center of my back. I stopped so fast my shoes scraped. My heart was pounding. I looked around and there was nobody close enough to have done anything. After that, I changed my route completely. And during that same period, I started noticing people everywhere who just didn't seem right. Like I'd go into a cafe or a restaurant, and there would be groups of people moving in these unnatural ways. Too synchronized, too stiff, like they were acting out what they thought normal looked like. They'd talk in this odd cadence, laugh half a second too late, turn their heads too sharply, stare too long. It sounds dramatic, but it felt like watching something imitate humans without really understanding how humans work. Eventually, I got a better job and moved away. And I remember thinking, okay, that chapter is over. I'm not going to carry this with me. But about a year after I moved, I was talking to a friend. His name was Marcus, who had moved into that same building around the same time I did. He told me he'd been reading posts online about people in that city being murdered over the years, and that the investigations always went cold. He said the rumors went back decades. And then, a year after that conversation, Marcus was murdered in that same city. They found him in an abandoned house. The police put out a statement, and then nothing. It's been well over a year since. No updates, no closure, just silence. And that's when the question I'd tried not to ask finally came out of me. What if that place is influenced? Not just dangerous, not just corrupt, but spiritually wrong. Like something's rooted there. I even talked to an old coworker about it, and they told me this story, how they were robbed at knife point once and got cut on the hand. They ran until they found a police officer, held up their bleeding hand, begging for help. And the officer looked at it, smirked, and drove away. They had to drive themselves to the hospital. So when I lay all of it side by side, the malfunctioning access, the figures, the red beam, the feeling of being targeted, the way help just evaporated when it was needed, it's hard not to wonder if the whole area is under some kind of darkness, something that makes people cold, something that makes truth slip through cracks. And the part that really messes with me? Even after I left, even after I moved down to Connecticut, I still started noticing strange things. Not as intense, not as concentrated, but enough to make me feel like whatever I brushed up against back then didn't fully let go. And I don't tell this to scare you. I'm telling you because it happened, and because carrying something like that alone makes you feel crazy. So when I say I've been reflective lately, that's what I mean. Because I don't know what that was, but I know it was real. So, I should probably start by telling you where I'm coming from. I'm a neurodivergent young adult, early 20s, and I'm usually the kind of person who tries to explain things logically before I let them get mystical. But one night, somewhere around late autumn, like October drifting into November, I had this dream that didn't feel like a dream. It felt administered, like my brain had been gently put into a mode I didn't recognize. I woke up in this room that was almost aggressively white. Not cozy white, more like sterile, endless, nothing to hold on to white. No posters, no windows, no clutter, just blankness. And I'm sitting at a white table in my pajamas, like I'd been taken from bed and placed there without my permission, but weirdly, without fear. My body felt heavy, like I was half asleep, half sedated. You know that sensation when you're trying to move through water? Like your limbs belong to someone else? Across from me, there's someone seated. And the first thing I remember thinking is, that is not a normal-looking person. They were extremely pale, like the kind of pale that makes you think of albinism, skin, hair, everything. Their hair was almost silver white. Their eyes were this light, washed-out shade, pinkish or pale amber, I couldn't tell. Their face was narrow and sharp in a delicate way, with this thin nose and small mouth. And the strangest part was that I couldn't confidently place their gender. Not because they looked androgynous in a trendy way, more like my brain couldn't grab the concept properly. They were dressed in white too, of course, like the room wanted nothing to break the theme. And they started speaking to me, or trying to. It came out as this jumble. Bits of Spanish, bits of English, and then a third language that my mind couldn't label. Not made-up fantasy language, not something I recognized from TV. It felt real, like my brain just didn't have the decoder installed. I could catch fragments, like someone flipping a radio dial. You need to listen. You can. Maybe we try again. But then it would slip away into that other tongue, and I'd lose the thread. I remember looking at them and feeling this odd calm, like I trusted them without knowing why. That's what messes with me the most, honestly. Because if I saw someone like that in real life, in a white room, while I felt drugged, I should have been terrified. But I wasn't. I felt safe. And I kept staring at them with this intense sense of recognition, like I'd met them before, but not in any normal context. Like my brain was rifling through a filing cabinet going, Where do I know you from? Where did I see you? They seemed to notice my confusion, and I tried to speak, switching between Spanish and English, basically apologizing, telling them I wasn't understanding, that they needed to pick one language and stick to it. I even tried to gesture with my hands, but my body barely cooperated. It was like something was keeping me seated, or like gravity was heavier just for me. The person, let's call them Evo, because my mind refuses to keep calling them the figure. Evo looked frustrated. Not angry, more like someone trying to explain an important idea to a child who doesn't have the words yet. At one point, I glanced around the room, trying to find a door behind me. And the moment I turned my head, I felt this gentle pressure, like Evo lightly guided my face back toward them. Not rough, not controlling, more like, please stay with me, focus. And then I got this creepiest, strangest sensation, like there might have been someone else behind me. Not that I saw them, just that instinct, like the air had an extra presence in it. Eventually, Evo slowed down. Their shoulders sank a little, like they were running out of energy, or patience, or permission. They looked past me again, toward the place I assumed a door would be. Then they looked back at me, and their expression softened in this way that felt almost sad. And then, this is the moment that's burned into my memory. They touched my cheek, like a careful, affectionate gesture, and they spoke in perfect Spanish, clear as day, no mixing, no distortion. Maybe it's better we stop, go back to where you were, and wake up like nothing happened. Something like that. Not necessarily word for word, but the meaning was sharp and unmistakable. And I remember trying to respond, like, wait, what? Stop? Go back? What is this? Who are you? Where am I? But I didn't get the chance, because the next sensation was exactly like being put under anesthesia. That fast, sinking drift where your thoughts just loosen and the room falls away. My head dipped forward like I'd nodded off sitting up, and then everything went dark. And then I woke up in my bed, cold, slightly sweaty, and disoriented, like my brain had been shaken. The same kind of dizzy feeling I get when a car moves too fast or changes direction suddenly. I sat up and looked around like I expected that white room to still be somewhere in the corner. And then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. My dog, Nala, usually sleeps in her bed right next to mine. She's a creature of habit. But that night, she wasn't there. She was out in the hallway, in her watching spot, like she was guarding the house. I turned on my bedside light, and when I looked toward the hallway, she lifted her head slowly. Too slowly, like she'd been in a deeper sleep than normal, like it took effort to surface. And I know, there are normal explanations. Dogs move. Dogs sleep deeply. A light turning on can make them blink and look groggy. But stacked on top of that dream, that vivid, lucid, sedated feeling experience, it rattled me. For months after, it kept popping into my mind, sometimes consciously, sometimes like my brain would replay it in the background while I was doing something normal, like washing a cup or scrolling my phone. And here's the part where family makes everything more complicated. On my mom's side, there's more belief in spiritual stuff. Ancestors, signs, angels, that kind of thing. My dad is more like me, skeptical about the details, but completely convinced we are not alone in the universe. Like, statistically, something else has to be out there. So I told them. I told my parents and also my cousin Marina, who stays with us some days for work. My dad and Marina both reacted the same way. Quiet, uneasy curiosity. Like, that's strange. But with no label they felt confident putting on it. My mom immediately leaned toward the spiritual interpretation. She said it could have been an angel or a relative who passed away, trying to give me a message. But honestly, that didn't fit. I've had dreams about my late grandmother. Those feel completely different. In those dreams, we both kind of know she's gone. There's a softness to it, a familiar warmth, a kind of shared understanding that it's a dream. This wasn't like that. This felt foreign, clinical, surreal, but precise. Like someone tried to reach me through a channel that wasn't designed for my brain. And I'm left with this weird combination of feelings. Not fear exactly, but this lingering question that won't settle. Because if it was just a dream, why did it feel like I was being spoken to? And why do I still get the sense, every time I replay it, that Eva wasn't improvising? That they were trying to do something they'd done before. And for some reason, it just didn't work on me this time. So, I have to tell you what happened the other night, because it's still messing with my head a little, and I genuinely don't know if this was a freaky phone glitch or something I can't really explain. It was around 3:50 in the morning when it started. Dead quiet. My husband, Evan, and I were asleep in our bedroom, and I woke up out of nowhere because of this obscenely loud snoring. Like, the kind of snoring you'd expect from a full-grown man passed out on a couch after Thanksgiving dinner. At first, I honestly thought it was Evan. I reached over and nudged him, kind of half asleep and annoyed. But when I did, he startled awake too, like he hadn't been snoring at all. And the weirdest part was, the snoring didn't stop. We just laid there for a second, both awake now, staring at each other in the dark, while this snoring kept going like it was happening right next to the bed. Our first thought was our dog, Miso. She's a little terrier mix, and she'll do a tiny snort sometimes, but never anything remotely like this. Still, we whispered her name, like, "Miso, hey, shh," expecting her to be right there at the foot of the bed. Except, she wasn't. Miso stood up from her little bed across the room, totally silent, ears up, looking confused. And I swear to you, the snoring was still going, steady, loud, and unsettlingly human. No robotic distortion, no crackle, no speakerphone weirdness. Just deep breathing and snoring like there was a stranger sleeping beside us. Evan switched on the lamp, and that's when we realized the sound was coming from my phone on the nightstand. That alone would have been creepy enough, but listen, when I picked the phone up, the snoring got quieter, the same way it does when you lightly jostle a real person and they sort of half adjust. It didn't cut off completely, but it dropped like the source had shifted or moved. My stomach just sank. I unlocked the screen, expecting to see something. A call, a voicemail, a weird app open, a video playing, anything. But there was nothing. No call in progress, no missed calls, no notifications, no media, no recent apps running. Just the normal lock screen like the phone had been asleep the whole time. And the phone was in Do Not Disturb mode. Anything incoming should have gone straight to voicemail anyway. But the snoring kept coming through the speaker, even though the phone wasn't doing anything that should produce audio. And it never switched to the earpiece, just the bottom speaker, like someone was literally breathing into the room through it. We sat there, wide awake, just listening to it, both of us trying to explain it and failing. Finally, Evan said, "Call my phone. Just call me." So I did. I tapped his name and hit call. And the second I pressed it, instantly, the snoring was cut off mid-breath, like someone yanked a cord, and it was replaced by the normal outgoing ringing tone. Like the phone suddenly remembered it was a phone. After that, everything behaved totally normal. No call log appeared that explained the snoring. No notifications popped up. The phone didn't heat up. No weird battery drain. Nothing you could point to and say, "Oh, yep, that was it." But the part that still gets me? miso. And that's honestly it. That's the whole story. I'm telling you because I want a sane explanation. Some rare telecom glitch, a stuck audio buffer, a weird accidental stream, anything. But the way it sounded so real, and the way it got quieter when I lifted the phone, and the way it stopped the exact moment an outgoing call began. I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it. So, I'm going to tell you this the way it actually felt, because I still don't know what to do with it. I'm not someone who's out here looking for spooky stuff. I go to church most weeks. I keep my life pretty steady. And honestly, I've never had what you'd call a paranormal experience. If anything, I'm the person who talks myself out of being dramatic. A couple years back, I was convinced we had mice. I kept hearing tiny little sounds and I thought, okay, great, we've got a problem. So I hired an exterminator, this guy named Frank, and he did the full sweep, basement to attic. He found nothing. Still, just to be safe, I paid to have a few gaps sealed. They added that pest-resistant insulation in a couple spots, and they put some traps down. Nothing. Not a single sign of mice. Not then, not since. But even after that, the house still felt off. Like the air in it doesn't sit right sometimes. And I kept telling myself it was just the age of it, because it's an old place, about a century old, big, creaky, the kind of house that makes normal settling noises, and you have to constantly remind yourself, this is what old houses do. It used to be the rectory for the church next door. Not my church, a different one. That's just a fact about the property, you know? But it's one of those facts that started to feel heavier once all this started. Most weekends, I'm home alone. My kids go to their dad's, and it's just me and my cats. And my cats, listen, these are not clingy, anxious cats. They're the type that do their own thing, sleep upstairs in their tower, and only grace me with affection when they feel like it. Then, one night, my bedroom door started popping open. Not like, oh, it didn't latch all the way. I mean, it would be closed, and then I'd hear that little shift, and it would ease open like someone had pushed it. It happened enough times that I got annoyed and put hooks on a couple of the bedroom doors to keep heat in when rooms weren't being used. Practical solution. No drama. I even set up indoor cameras because I thought, maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe the cats are pushing it. The cameras caught nothing. Ever. And then the doorbell started. 2-ish weeks ago, late at night, my doorbell rang. Not once. Over and over. Like someone was standing there leaning on it, letting off just enough to press again. It was one of those old-school wired doorbells, the kind that goes ding-dong with the little chime box mounted right near the bedrooms, so it's loud and obnoxious and impossible to ignore. I shot out of bed, heart pounding, and went to look. No one. I looked outside, expecting to see footprints because it had snowed earlier. Nothing. I checked my camera feed, porch cam, driveway angle. Nothing. Not even a weird shadow. The next morning, still kind of shaky but trying to be logical, I went to the hardware store and bought a simple battery doorbell. Nothing fancy, just a little modern button and a wireless chime. I replaced the old one. I fully removed the old button from the door frame. Like, it wasn't even there anymore. That night, same time, the new doorbell went off. Rapid fire. Insistent. Like someone was mad that I wasn't answering. I stood there in my hallway thinking, okay, wind? Faulty button? Maybe something is shorting? I yanked the batteries out of the new one and went back to bed, telling myself I was being ridiculous. The next night, I woke up again at almost the exact same time, and I heard the doorbell. Except, it wasn't the new one. It was the old doorbell, the one I'd removed. I got up fast and went to open my bedroom door, and it wouldn't open because the hook was latched from the outside. I just stood there for a second staring at it, genuinely waiting for my brain to come up with a normal explanation, and it couldn't. No one else was home. My kids were with their dad. I always lock the front door. Always. My bedroom has a second way out, a side porch door. So I went out that way and looped around to the front, keys shaking in my hand like I couldn't get them into the lock. Front door was still locked. When I stepped into the foyer, the closet door across from my bedroom was wide open. And that closet door is never open. I keep it shut on purpose because there's this massive safe inside it, left behind years ago by the church next door because it's too big to haul out. It's basically the only thing in there, and I have this weird fear one of my cats will somehow climb in or get stuck around it, so I keep the closet closed. Like, I'm strict about it. The closet was open. And no, it can't swing into my bedroom door or pop the latch or anything like that. The handles are on opposite sides. There's no, oh, maybe the knob caught explanation. I checked cameras again. Nothing. No one on either porch. No motion, no footsteps, no cars. Nothing. I stayed up most of that night, just sitting there with my house feeling too big and too quiet. Even my cats wouldn't come downstairs. They stayed upstairs like they were refusing to cross some invisible line. The next night, I tried to be brave and normal. I left my bedroom door cracked and put a small heater in there for warmth, trying to convince myself the hook thing was a fluke and I'd just gotten myself worked up. Then it happened again. 2:41 a.m. And this time, this is the part that makes me feel insane. Both doorbells went off. The new one and the old one at the same time. Like the house was making a point. I got up, ripped the batteries out of the new one, and I grabbed a screwdriver and went to the chime box on the wall, the old one. I popped it open and disconnected what I could, pulling a wire loose so there was no way it should be able to chime again. I didn't even know the correct term for what I was yanking off. I was just thinking, stop, stop, stop. While I'm doing that, I hear the hook on my bedroom door start to rattle. Not a gentle wiggle, a deliberate rattle, like someone testing it. I turned my head in time to see the hook jump up, pop free, and the door ease open. I finished what I was doing, walked over, hooked it again, and, this is embarrassing, but I said out loud, half joking, half daring the air, "Okay, do it again." I turned away to put the screwdriver down. I took maybe 3 steps, and I heard the hook pop. I turned back and watched the door swing open, and then it slammed shut. Not a draft, not a gentle click, a slam that shook the frame. Upstairs, my cats went absolutely feral. Hissing, growling, that low, angry sound cats make when they feel cornered. They are normally the calmest little creatures, and I've never heard them sound like that in my life. The next night, my kids came home, and I didn't tell them. I didn't tell their dad either. I didn't want to scare them, and honestly, I didn't want anyone thinking I was losing it. But then my daughter, Mila, came downstairs in the middle of the night and said she heard something. I tried to stay casual, like, "What kind of something?" And she hesitated and said, "It sounded like the doorbell, but quieter, like it was far away." There was no doorbell going off. Nothing on the cameras. Nothing on the porch. Just my kid hearing the same thing my body has been bracing for every night. And the worst part is, I don't even know what I'm afraid of. I just know I'm scared to go to sleep in my own home. because it feels like I'm not alone in it, even when every camera, every lock, every logical check says I am. So let me tell you something that still gives me goosebumps, even though it happened when we were kids. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where you wake up way too early on purpose because cartoons are basically sacred. My brother Callum and I came padding downstairs in our socks, half asleep but laser focused on the TV. We plopped ourselves in the living room, all cozy and smug, and that's when we noticed something odd. Our mom's car wasn't in the driveway. We could see the whole driveway from this big front window, like a perfect little lookout spot. So it wasn't a maybe it's there situation. It was just gone. We figured Mom had popped out to one of those early morning church prayer meetups she sometimes went to with a friend, and she'd be back any minute. No big deal. So we went back to cartoons. A little while later, we both heard it. That unmistakable sound of tires crunching on gravel. Our driveway was all loose stone, so you could hear a car coming before you could even see it. Then we saw the car turning in and coming up the drive. And here's the thing. We didn't just hear it. We actually watched it come in. It bumped up over the curb, rolled over the little footpath, and eased onto the driveway like normal. Like absolutely, boringly normal. Then it stopped about halfway up, and just sat there. At first, we didn't think much of it, but then a minute passed, then another, and Mum still hadn't gotten out. No car door, no footsteps, no keys jingling, no slam, nothing. Callum turned to me and goes, "What's Mum doing?" And I remember shrugging like, I don't know, maybe she's on the phone? But even as I said it, something felt off. Because if you're parked in the driveway and your kids are visible in the front window, wouldn't you wave? Wouldn't you come in? Wouldn't you do literally anything? So I told him, just go check. Make sure she's okay. He hopped down from the couch and walked to the front door, and I stayed planted right where I was, pretending I wasn't suddenly nervous. I kept the TV on, but I wasn't really watching it anymore. I was listening for something. Callum came back in less than a minute, and he says, really quietly, "There's no one in the car." I actually laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous that my brain didn't know what else to do. I was like, "What do you mean there's no one in it?" And he goes, "It's locked, and it's empty." That's when my stomach dropped. Because we hadn't heard the door open or close. We hadn't seen anyone get out. And again, we were staring straight at the driveway. If Mom had stepped out and walked away, we would have seen her. There wasn't anywhere to go without crossing the front of the house. I remember getting that tight, prickly feeling up my arms, like when you realize you might be in trouble but you don't know why yet. So I told him, "Go wake Dad. Tell him something weird is happening." He ran upstairs, and I just sat there staring at the window like the car might do something else, like it might start moving again on its own. Then Callum came back down, and I swear to you, his face had gone that ghostly pale, like someone had drained all the color out of him. He said, "Mom and Dad are both asleep, in bed, both of them." I stood up so fast I nearly knocked the remote off the couch. Because, what? That didn't make any sense. Mom's car was right there. We watched it come in. We heard it. We saw it stop. But Mom was upstairs asleep? So I rushed to the little dish in the hallway where the car keys always lived. And there they were, sitting in the bowl like they'd never moved, like nobody had touched them at all. I just remember staring at them, completely frozen, like the keys were going to explain themselves if I glared hard enough. And the thing is, the car hadn't just appeared. We watched it come in, especially the part where it climbed up over the curb onto the driveway. That's not something a car does silently or subtly. And it didn't roll down the slope either. Our driveway angled slightly downward, so if it was somehow just coasting or the handbrake failed or whatever, it wouldn't stop neatly halfway up. It would have kept rolling and smashed into the fence near the garden. But it stopped like someone pressed the brake. Like someone was driving. Only there was nobody there. When we finally told our parents later, they brushed it off like kids being kids. Like we'd had matching dreams, or one of us made it up and the other just went along with it. But Callum and I have talked about it more times than I can count, even years later, and we both remember it the same way. Honestly, I know how it sounds. I do. It's the kind of story people smile politely at and then file under, sure, okay. But I'm telling you, that was one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a shadow in the corner or a bump in the night. It was normal life, normal morning, normal cartoons. Right up until the moment we realized the car that came home had no one inside it. And to this day, I still can't explain how that happened. Not even a little bit. So, this happened back when I was in 10th grade, right in the middle of exam season. We were living in northern India then, and everything already felt like pressure. Notes, deadlines, the constant hum of worry in the background. On top of that, my family had moved into a new apartment only a few months earlier, so nothing felt fully settled yet. You know that feeling? Like your body lives there, but your mind hasn't unpacked. One night, I studied way too late. My eyes were burning, my head was heavy, and when I finally shut my books, I just wanted sleep to swallow me whole. I turned off the light and lay down. The room wasn't pitch black. There was this pale spill of moonlight and a bit of streetlight coming through the curtains. My bed was right beside the window, so even in the dark, I could still make out shapes, edges of furniture, the outline of the door, shadows resting in corners. I was lying on my back, trying to slow my breathing, when I casually glanced toward my feet, and immediately, something felt wrong, like my brain hit a wall, because there was an extra leg near my feet, not mine. It was long and heavy-looking, slightly bent at the knee. The color was this dull gray, almost see-through, but not in a weak way. It looked real, like it had weight, like it belonged on the mattress. And above it, where a torso should have been, there was this dark, cloudy mass. Not a clean shape, more like a thick smoke or fog that kept shifting, but still, gathered enough to feel like a presence. For a second, my mind tried to correct it. Like, no, that's a shadow. That's a trick of light. That's something else. But it didn't change. And then the worst thought landed, slow and icy. If that is near my feet, then its face would be right next to mine. I tried to turn my head to the left. I couldn't. My entire body locked up like it had been switched off. Not even panic at first, just this stunned, frozen numbness. My heart was going insane, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I couldn't move my arms, my legs, nothing. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even whisper. It felt like I was trapped inside my own skin. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds feel like minutes in that kind of moment. But somehow, I pushed against it with everything I had, like I was trying to break through invisible cement. And the instant I could move, I bolted. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I just ran. To get to my parents' room, I had to cross the living room. Our living room had these wide, sliding glass doors that opened onto the balcony. We were on the 6th floor, so the balcony felt like this dark, open edge to the night. As I ran parallel to those glass doors, something outside snapped my attention so hard it almost made me trip. There was someone on the balcony. a figure, like an older woman, broad in shape, more silhouette than detail. It was so dark out there that I couldn't see a face, but I could feel her outline, like it was carved into the night itself. And the moment I started running, she stood up, and ran too, parallel to me, same direction, same pace, like she was matching me perfectly, step for step, only separated by the glass. I swear, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt intentional, like she'd been waiting to move until I moved. I don't remember making any sound. I just remember the impact, my shoulder hitting my parents' door, my hands fumbling, my body shaking so violently I could barely stand. I stumbled inside, and I think I collapsed onto the floor or the bed. I don't even know. I was trembling so hard, it felt like my bones were vibrating. But all I could do was shake my head and try to breathe. And after that, nothing else happened that night. No footsteps, no knocking, no sounds from the balcony. Just quiet, like the apartment had returned to normal and left me alone to question my own mind. Months later, after we'd moved out of that building, my father mentioned something casually, like he was talking about traffic or the price of vegetables. He said, "You know, I used to see an old woman on the balcony sometimes when I came home late." Just like that. I stared at him, and my stomach turned cold. He told me he never brought it up back then because he didn't want to scare me during exams. He thought maybe it was his tired eyes or shadows, or just a strange illusion, so he kept it to himself. And then, later, I heard something else from a neighbor we'd stayed in touch with. Before that apartment complex was built, there had been a huge banyan tree on that exact spot. Old, famous in the area. The kind of tree people talk about quietly, the kind they don't mess with. It was cut down to make way for the building. And I remember just sitting there after hearing that, quiet, still, because it felt like the final piece sliding into place. Like my mind had been holding its breath this whole time, and that was the last line it needed to finally exhale. So, let me take you back to 2018, when I was living in Utrecht, sharing this slightly creaky old apartment with two friends, Milo and Jonas. The place had character, you know? Tall windows, narrow stairs, and a quiet canal that ran right behind the building. Close enough that if you leaned out from our little balcony, you could see the water sliding past like it had somewhere important to be. Most nights after dinner, Milo had this habit. Nothing big, nothing theatrical. He'd take a tiny pinch of leftovers, like a couple grains of rice, a pea or two, maybe a crumb of bread, and drop it into the canal. Now, we were pretty spiritual back then. Before we ate, we'd offer the meal. A quick prayer, a moment of intention. And Milo's thinking was simple. If the food is offered with love, then whoever receives it benefits. Fish, ducks, whatever. In our tradition, sanctified food, prasadam, is meant to uplift consciousness, no matter who gets it. So in his mind, that little nightly offering was a small act of compassion, like feeding unseen neighbors. And honestly, it just became part of the rhythm of the house. Dinner, cleanup, Milo stepping out for a second, water rippling. Done. Then Milo went away for a while, about 10 days, I think, visiting his sister up north. During that stretch, the routine stopped. It was just me, Jonas, and my partner Leah, who came to stay for the week. We still cooked the same, still offered the food the same way, but no one was tossing that little portion into the canal anymore. And that's when the apartment started to feel wrong. It wasn't like a movie. Nothing jumped out, no slamming doors every 5 minutes. It was subtler than that, almost worse because of it. The kitchen was the center of it. At night especially, you'd walk in there and the temperature felt noticeably colder, like the air was heavier. And whenever any of us cooked, there was this steady, skin-prickling feeling that someone was standing too close. right at your shoulder, like they were watching what you were doing. Even if you knew you were alone, your body didn't believe it. You'd find yourself turning around, expecting to see someone behind you, and there'd be nothing. But the feeling stayed. Sometimes there were tiny sounds, soft shifting, a kind of slow, breathy presence, like the room was occupied in a way you couldn't explain. What really got me was that the three of us felt it separately. Nobody planted the idea. Jonas mentioned it first, super casually, like he didn't want to make it dramatic. Just, "Do you ever feel like someone's in the kitchen with you?" And Leah, without missing a beat, goes, "Yes, every single night." And then the physical stuff started. Random headaches. That heavy, drained feeling in your limbs like you'd slept wrong. But it would hit specifically after spending time in the kitchen. Standing there too long felt exhausting. Being in there alone started to feel genuinely scary, like you were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing. And then came the little incidents, the kind that, on their own, you could shrug off. But stacked together, night after night, they start to feel like a pattern. The fridge door was open when none of us remembered touching it. We'd hear the soft thump of it opening and closing when we were in the living room. Leah dropped her fork mid-bite once, like her hand just let go for no reason. Jonas swore he heard utensils clinking in the sink when the kitchen lights were off and nobody was in there. Always the kitchen. Always. So I said, out loud, kind of sharp, kind of daring, "All right, if someone's actually here, give me a sign. Right now." And I swear to you, instantly, the entire right side of my body reacted like it had been plugged into ice. Every hair stood up. Not gradually. Not, "Oh, maybe I'm imagining it." It was immediate, like a cold electric ripple shot from my shoulder down my arm and into my ribs. I froze in place. At the exact same moment, Lee inhaled like she'd been startled and rubbed her shoulders, saying she felt this pressure, like hands hovering just behind her. And Jonas's face went pale and he said, "It's hard to breathe in here suddenly." We all looked at each other with that same expression, like, okay, it's not just me. And the strangest part was this. It didn't feel violent. It wasn't rage. It felt desperate. Hungry, but not in the normal sense. Like something had gotten used to receiving a little offering every night, like clockwork, and then it stopped. And whatever it was didn't know how to ask. It just pressed closer. That's the best way I can describe it. Not attacking, pressing. We didn't try to be heroes after that. We got practical. We started chanting mantras in the apartment, softly at first, then more steadily. We left lights on in the kitchen at night. Lee put up a couple of spiritual images we'd brought with us. Nothing fancy, just things that made the space feel protected, anchored. And over the next few days, the heaviness started to loosen, like the apartment could exhale again. When Milo came back, we told him everything, every detail, all of it. And he didn't laugh. He also didn't get scared. He just listened, really quietly, then nodded like it made a kind of sense to him. He said something like, "I always did it with compassion, but maybe I wasn't being conscious enough about the prayer." That night, after dinner, he did it again. Took a tiny portion of prasadam, stepped out, and this time he paused. He actually prayed, deliberately, that whoever received it, seen or unseen, could be helped, could be uplifted, could find peace. And after that? Nothing. No cold pocket in the kitchen, no hovering feeling, no weird sounds, no headaches. The apartment felt light again, like the walls were friendly. Milo kept doing the offering most nights after that, and the rest of the time we lived there, almost 2 more years, the place stayed calm. It honestly felt like everything was finally in balance again. Us, the space, and whatever or whoever had been lingering by that canal, waiting for something small but meaningful. So, a little context first, because this story kind of needs it. Before I was even born, my family owned this modest little place in a gated countryside community, about an hour and a half from the city. Nothing luxurious, just a weathered old house my grandparents built ages ago, a lean-to shed, and this surprisingly roomy backyard where you could actually hear yourself think. It was our summer escape, the place we'd go when the city started feeling too loud and too close. Every single summer break, from the time I was a baby until I was about 15, I stayed there with my grandma, Marta. And when I say I was there from the start, I mean from the start. My parents brought me out there before I could even walk properly. That house is wrapped around some of my earliest memories like a scent you can't quite name. And the most important detail is this. Our land sat right on the edge of a forest. Not near a forest, not a short walk from one. I mean, you stepped out into the yard and there it was. Dark, crowded trees pressed up like a wall at the edge of the world. Between our fence and the forest was a narrow dirt lane, then another tall fence that surrounded the whole community. So it was like our house, our fence, a strip of road, and then this forest that just waited there. We sold that place about 6 years ago, moved somewhere brighter and more convenient. A better location, better everything. And yet, I still carry that forest with me. Because from the very first memories I have of that place, I was terrified of that particular stretch of woods. And I don't mean kids are scared of spooky trees at night, terrified. I mean a fear that didn't make sense even to me, a fear that felt older than my own thoughts. It only happened at night. During the day, I was fearless. I ran all over those fields, climbed around, got dirty, got lost, found my way back. But as soon as the sun dropped and the windows started turning into black mirrors, something changed inside me. When I was really little, the fear was so strong I wouldn't go near uncovered windows. If the curtains were open, I'd keep my distance like the glass itself could hurt me. And the worst part was that I couldn't explain it to anyone without sounding ridiculous. Because what do you even say? I don't like the forest. No, it wasn't dislike. It was this heavy, instinctive certainty that if I looked too long, something would look back. As I got older, that feeling didn't fade like most childhood fears do. It didn't get laughed out of me. It didn't get replaced by new anxieties. It stayed, steady and sharp. And whenever I had to step outside at night, like to grab something from the shed or take out the trash, I'd get hit with this horrible drop in my stomach, that sinking feeling, like my body was warning me before my brain could catch up. I'd be halfway down the porch steps and suddenly it would feel like I shouldn't be here. Like the forest wasn't just there in the dark, like it was aware. I can't describe it better than this. It felt like being watched. Not imagined, not spooky vibes. More like your skin knows you're being stared at, even when your eyes can't confirm it. And the weirdest part? It was only me. My grandma never felt it. No one else did. My family could sit outside at night, chatting like it was nothing, while I was trying to act normal through a pounding heart. I didn't want to be the dramatic kid. I didn't want to be the one who made things up. But I wasn't making anything up. And yes, during the day, I explored that forest too. The exact patch that haunted me at night. And there was nothing special there. Nothing that should have marked it as wrong. There was an abandoned little pond that was mostly dried up, and this low mound that turned out to be an old dumping spot, trash buried under soil from years ago. Not magical, not dramatic, just messy forest. I even got curious enough later on to check old maps from before the neighborhood existed. Same story, just more forest back then. No old buildings, no marked sites, no "something happened here" dot on the page. I went searching for history, local stories, accidents, anything. Nothing. But Marta, my grandma, used to talk about something in that forest. She called it the Wanderer's Clearing. In our language, it was closer to the clearing where people lose their sense, like a place where you walk in and your brain forgets which way is out. She said she'd heard it when she was young, and that older people avoided it. And then she'd say this part that always made my neck tighten. When big storms came through, they didn't pass straight over that clearing. They circled it. And the thing is, I watched that happen more than once. Every summer, thunderstorms rolled in like they always do. You'd hear the first grumble, feel the air thicken, smell that sharp metal scent. And the rain would start, hard, loud, drumming on the roof for an hour or two. Then it would stop, like someone had shut a tap. The clouds would drift off, the world would brighten again, and you'd think, okay, it's over. And then, later, it would come back. The same storm, the same heavy rain, like it had looped around and returned on purpose. And I'm not talking about once. I saw it happen over and over, the storm making full circles, sometimes 5 loops, sometimes more, like something in that area kept tugging it back around. I always assumed there had to be some clean scientific explanation. Wind patterns, temperature differences, geography, whatever. But even now, I haven't found an explanation that matches the way it looked from that yard. Not neatly, anyway. Then there's what Marta used to swear happened with ball lightning. She told me stories that I thought were just that, stories, until other relatives confirmed them like it was no big deal. They said that during a couple of those storms, a glowing sphere, actual ball lightning, came out of the forest. Not in the sky, not far away, from the trees. It would drift toward our property like it was curious, and sometimes it would circle the house, slowly, calmly, like it had all the time in the world. And then it would slam into the fence. Metal posts would light up at the tops, glowing and spitting little discharges, like the whole fence was briefly alive. Multiple people said it happened, independently, with the same details. And listen, I know how this sounds. I'm not saying there's definitely something supernatural in the woods. I'm not even trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just telling you what I lived with. And I need you to understand this too. I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of forests at night in general. I've done long hikes, slept alone in a tent miles from anyone, listened to animals moving outside the fabric and felt perfectly fine. I know what normal nighttime fear feels like. This wasn't that. This was something else. This was this deep, physical sense of dread, like being watched, but more than watched, like being measured, like being noticed in a way you didn't want to be, like prey realizing it's been singled out. And that's the part I can't solve. Because we left. We sold the place. The forest is someone else's background now. But whatever that feeling was, it never stayed behind. So, I'm a 40-year-old bloke from the UK, and for as long as I can remember, weird things, the kind you can't quite explain, have had a habit of orbiting my life. But the strangest stretch of it all happened during this short little window back in late 2003 into early 2004, when everything went off. Like reality was just a touch out of alignment. To understand why I ended up where I did, you've got to know my parents weren't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. They weren't addicts, they weren't violent, they were just absent. The sort of people who did the bare minimum: food, clothes, roof, but without any love behind it. And once you were old enough to function on your own, they acted like their job was done. So when I was 18, not long before my birthday, they decided they were moving across the country. And I still remember my mom standing in my doorway like she was telling me the weather. She said they'd bought a place miles away, and there wouldn't really be room for me. No apology, no discussion, no, "What are you going to do?" Just, "We're going. You'll sort yourself out." Luckily, I had a girlfriend at the time, I'll call her Hannah, and her family had been the closest thing I'd had to a support system. Her older brother, Gareth, was going through a rough patch with work and had a spare room, so it became this awkward but workable plan. I'd move in with him for a bit, finish my studies, keep my part-time job, contribute what I could, and try to get my feet under me. Gareth lived in this small town called Loughton, right on the edge of Epping Forest. And when I say edge, I mean it felt like the town had been built inside a clearing and the forest just pressed in from every direction. If you've ever been there, you know the place has a reputation. Ancient woodland, old history, dark stories. The kind of area where people talk about hauntings in that half-joking, half-not way. His flat was above an old shop on a main street. Cobbled road, steep hill, those old timber-framed buildings that look like they've been watching generations pass by. The shop below sold home improvement stuff, windows, doors, that sort of thing, which always made me laugh because the building itself still had these old leaded panes that couldn't be replaced because of conservation rules. To get into the flat, you didn't go in through the front like you'd expect. You crossed this little back drive, and the front door was actually at the rear. Inside was a long, windowless corridor. On the right, first a utility room, then the bathroom. At the very end, a small kitchen and a staircase up to the main living space and bedrooms. It felt like the layout had been cobbled together by someone trying to make a shop building behave like a home. Upstairs, there were 2 big bedrooms and a generously sized lounge. Gareth had a teenage son, I'll call him Lewis, who stayed between Gareth's place and his mum's. No fixed schedule, more like he turned up when he felt like it, and Gareth just rolled with it. The arrangement was, I took Gareth's bedroom, Gareth took Lewis's room, and when Lewis came over, Gareth slept on the sofa. Not ideal, but everyone acted like it was temporary, so nobody made a big deal of it. And for the first few weeks, honestly, it was fine. Gareth became this older brother figure. We'd play Xbox, have a couple of beers, watch football. Lewis treated me like the sort of older cousin you can tolerate, and Hannah would come by and it would feel normal. Like I could build something stable from the rubble my parents had left. But then the flat started to feel wrong. And you never felt alone there. Even when you were the only person in the flat, you'd get that weird certainty that someone was nearby. Not imagination, not paranoia. That instinct humans have when there's another presence in the house. Except you'd turn corners and find nothing. I can't remember the exact first thing that happened. The order of events gets fuzzy. But one early moment still plays in my head like a clip from a film. I was alone in the flat one day, rare quiet gap between college and work. I went downstairs to use the bathroom and do laundry. As I came out into that hallway, I caught this waft of Hannah's perfume. And it wasn't subtle. It was her. The exact scent. I remember thinking maybe it was on clothes in the laundry basket, so I carried it down the hall to the utility area, loaded the machine, turned, and I saw her. Just for a second, the back of her, walking the way from me down the corridor toward the kitchen, like she'd just come in and was heading upstairs. So I called out, casually, like, "Han?" Nothing. I called again. Still nothing. I followed, because why wouldn't I? I watched her turn right into the kitchen area by the stairs, and when I stepped into the kitchen a moment later, no Hannah. But the cupboard where Gareth kept that plastic bag full of plastic bags, you know, the one every household seems to have, was open, and the bags were strewn across the floor like someone had yanked them out in a hurry. I stood there holding the laundry basket, just confused. I called upstairs. No reply. Went up, checked the lounge, checked both bedrooms. Empty. I was alone. And I remember this moment where my body just went still. You know when your brain is trying to bargain with what it just saw? Like, I definitely saw her. I did. I know I did. And yet there was nowhere she could have gone in the time it took me to follow. I tidied the bags away because what else do you do? And I didn't mention it immediately. I think part of me didn't want to hear myself say it out loud. But a few days later, I told Gareth, and the color drained from his face. He told me something that had happened not long before I moved in. Lewis, apparently, was prone to sleepwalking. Nothing dramatic, just that mild sort where he'd wander, mutter nonsense, sometimes wake up somewhere random and laugh it off the next morning. One night, Gareth woke up and heard Lewis moving around. He lay there at first, waiting for the usual. The shuffle, the door, then silence. But instead, he heard Lewis open his bedroom door and go downstairs. A bit of time passed, and Gareth decided he'd better check on him. So he went down into that long, dark hallway and saw Lewis standing at the far end, just staring into the utility room. And here's the detail Gareth couldn't shake. Lewis wasn't wandering or swaying like a sleepy kid. He was still, eyes open, fixed. The utility area didn't have a proper door, more like an open arch, and Lewis was standing right at it, looking into the dark like something in there had his full attention. Gareth told me he felt terrified in a way he couldn't explain. Like every instinct in his body was telling him not to go near his own son. But of course he did, because he had to. And the moment he got close, Lewis sort of blinked and came out of it, confused, half awake. Gareth led him back toward the stairs, and when they reached the kitchen, the plastic bag full of bags had been dragged out, bags all over the floor. Gareth had assumed Lewis did it in his sleep, until I told him I'd seen Hannah and the bags, and nobody else was there. The TV would change channels on its own. The radio would click on and off. Lights would flicker in that irritating way that makes you look up, even though you're trying not to. Once, Gareth and I were watching a match, beers in hand, laughing at something on screen. And we heard this unmistakable rustling sound downstairs. Plastic. Crinkling. Moving. We both went quiet at the same time, like we'd rehearsed it. Then we went downstairs together and found the bags again, dragged out, sprawled across the kitchen floor like someone had played with them. At least that time we both heard it, which somehow made it worse. But the one night I still think about, the one that sits at the top of the pile, happened near the end of my stay. For whatever reason, I decided to sleep on the sofa in the lounge. Maybe I felt guilty taking Gareth's room. Maybe Lewis was coming over. I honestly don't remember the reason, just the night itself. I remember the streetlight glow coming through the old windows, that dull orange wash that makes everything look like it's underwater. I remember the faint chill from the leaded panes. I lay with my head near the arm of the sofa closest to the lounge door, and at some point in the night, I woke up. Not fully, not at first, just that sudden, sharp awareness that pulls you up from sleep like a hook. And I heard this sound. I've never been able to describe it properly. The closest I can get is, Imagine the sensation of pins and needles when your foot goes numb, but translated into a noise. A thin, high, prickling kind of ringing. Not loud, just invasive. And then I knew. Someone was standing right by the sofa, at the arm, near my head. I didn't see anything. I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my body had decided for me. Don't react. Don't breathe. Don't give it anything. The cold was intense. Not just the room being chilly, but that deep cold that feels like it's inside your chest. I shut my eyes, pulled the blanket up tight around my shoulders and neck, buried my face into the back of the sofa like a child, and just waited. I remember silently begging whatever it was to leave. Eventually, I must have drifted off again, because the next thing I remember is morning light, and that weird embarrassment you feel after a night like that, like you've done something wrong just by being scared. A few months later, maybe 3, maybe closer to 4, I moved out into my own place like I'd planned. Hannah and I didn't last, not long term. We split a couple of years later, like a lot of young couples do. And over time, I lost touch with Gareth and Lewis too. But I've been thinking about that flat recently, about that corridor, the smell of perfume that wasn't there, the bags, the cold, that sound in the night. Because the truth is, this wasn't the first strange thing that's happened around me, and it wasn't the last. It was just the period where it all clustered together, close enough that you couldn't brush it off as coincidence. And every now and then, something will remind me. A smell, a streetlight glow through a window, and I'm right back there, lying on that sofa, frozen, pretending not to exist.